Welcome to episode 183 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the decision time edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host. I'm with my co-host, the iRacing Indy 500 champion, computer genius, gentleman and scholar, my one of the biggest Jacksonville Jaguar fans, at least the biggest Jacksonville Jaguar fan I know. His name is Josh Fine. What's going on, brother?
I'm doing great, Phil. Of course, we had a really interesting weekend of racing. And now we have one race left in the Cup Series before the playoffs start, and so we'll be ready to talk about that. But yeah, we had our fantasy draft as well, and we'll talk about that later. But a lot to go over there, so yeah, ready to get into it.
Yeah, and we have a special guest tonight, someone who has made his name in the world of stock car racing in recent years, somebody who has connections, in a sense, with some of the guys that we talk about regularly here on the GSP, but it's a return to racing for a good cause, and I think it'll be the first time that we've ever had somebody that is a politician on the GSP for sure, which is something I don't think I ever thought I would say. But we have the honor and privilege of having 2017 ARCA Series champion Austin Theriault, member of the House of Representatives in the state of Maine, in District 1. He's coming back to race at the Oxford 250 this weekend, and he's on to go and promote that and other things that are going on in his life. So thank you so much, Austin, for some of your time here tonight on the GSP.
Well, it's an honor to be on with you guys.
Yeah. So, I guess we'll open it up with this. I mean, I'm sporting the sponsor shirt from when you made your debut at New Hampshire in 2019 with a little bit of fan funding with Rick Ware, and you ran 5 Cup races that year. And since then, you focused on your driver development program. Funds have always been a thing in motorsports, and having to be able to put together sponsorship to be able to keep going. And I guess in that sense, when you were driving in Cup with those 5 races, were you thinking that was going to continue, or had you already started the process of starting your business with driver development?
Well, that's a long-winded question. I'll try to simplify it and break it down. Okay. I had already started doing driver development work approximately, I want to say, sometime after winning the ARCA championship. Say 2018 was a rough year, I think, when I started. When I had the opportunity to do the Cup Series with Rick Ware, that was a big thing for not only for me, but a lot of the folks who had followed me throughout my career, because breaking on to the Cup Series level is, I think, a big accomplishment for anybody, and even regardless of what team you're with. We had a great partnership with a sponsor that year that was coming together extremely well. By the time Talladega came around in October of that year, we were in, I think, a good shape for progressing further into expanding that for 2020. Unfortunately, like what happens a lot of times in racing is just the unexpected happens. I assume that maybe some of your listeners don't know my previous history, but when I was racing the trucks for Keselowski back in 2015, I ended up having a crash at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and life flighted, and that was a pretty substantial injury. Back then, they didn't have the safer barriers at all portions of the racetrack, so I ended up hitting a unprotected wall. I re-aggravated that injury in 2019 and decided at that point that I was going to step away from competing and pursuing this as a full-time career, and I'd had some awesome moments and awesome opportunities, and very thankful for that. But it was sort of time to turn the chapter, and so naturally the coaching and the business management and the marketing, all of that stuff was naturally stuff that I automatically knew because I had done it all myself. moving it into trying to help the other drivers and some of the younger folks, men and women, future drivers, develop into talent, in their own aspects, was something that I automatically sort of realized that I was going to enjoy right from the beginning. So that was my fortunate sort of next chapter after the cup races that we did in 2019, and that's what I continue to do now. And you're right, we've got a race coming up, and I am getting back behind the wheel for what I would consider probably just a one-off event. I'm not making a break back into racing or anything, from a full-time standpoint, but Maine racing is near and dear to my heart, and Oxford Plains is a special track for me. I've come close to winning that race several times, probably 3 times. Finish in the top 5 at least 3 or 4 times, but finish second, third, fourth, and we just haven't been able to break into victory lane, and that's a marquee race to win. So doing it for some special reasons this weekend, which I'm excited to talk about as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna get into talking about 2015, talking about all that, but I wanted to first kind of dovetail into this. I mean, we talk about late model racing and super late model racing. You got the ASA tour that's come back here. I mean, the amount of drivers that have come through the levels of late model racing. I mean, you drove for one of those guys in Dale Jr. And now you're coming back to a race which you in your history, you've ran it 5 times, 4 times. You finished in the top 5, and with that best finish of second. It's definitely a tough race to go and make your racing return, I would say, but you do have special reasons for that. You have a great partnership that you have made a connection with, and I think it's near and dear to a lot of people that not only listen, but just in general to our country and to what makes our country great. And so, you're coming back to race this weekend. Let us know who you're driving for, what, where they're at. Are they run full time? How is that? Are you a teammate, et cetera, et cetera? Let us know what you're doing to come back at the Oxford 250 this weekend.
Well, it reminds me of the old days racing. I cut my teeth racing up here in New England and in the PASS Tour and the ACT Tour. And so the team I'm driving for is a family operation. It's not a NASCAR operation. And that's what makes it even more exciting. Derek Ming out of Vermont, who I was connected to through chassis builder and car builder, Dale Shaw. There's too many car builders to remember, but Dale Shaw, who his son DJ races, and Dale's a legendary guy up here. A lot of history and wins across short track racing up here. He connected me with Derek, and Derek said, "Well, we're not going to run the race. Why don't you run the race for us?" And I said, "Okay, let's put this together." Bar Harbor Bank and Trust came on. They're very much involved in local community events up here in Maine and New Hampshire, and they're expanding very quickly, but they automatically bought into our vision, which was, hey, we want to do this for more than just the checkered flag at the end of the day. That would be nice to win, but we want to make a bigger impact than just collecting money and going home and bragging about winning the race. So we hitched our horses back together with Travis Mills. Travis is a quadruple amputee from the Afghanistan war. Lost his limbs in an explosion there, and now has a foundation that he set up, basically located in Maine, but they service and provide resources for families and wounded veterans from all across the country. And I worked with him back. I think the last race was Homestead, Miami, back in 2019 when I was doing the Cup stuff, and we raised some money for him. But I said, I think we can do a better job this time around because it's in front of a Maine crowd who knows who we are, knows Travis, knows me, very passionate about Maine racing. And I said, let's do this again and try to raise more money. So in collaboration with the bank, Bar Harbor Bank, and they're putting basically the funds for us to just go to the track and promote. We're going to be raising money for Travis and have the potential to raise up to $50,000, which is a lot of money. To run their services just for a week is about $50,000. So if I finish in the top 5, there's going to be a $25,000 bonus on top of if I finish all the laps. We have a anonymous sponsor who's going to be paying $100 a lap. So there's potential there for 25 plus 25. Plus, we also have another fundraiser going on online who we've already gotten close to $5,000 raised for that. And that's just regular people from across the country who are, contributing a couple of dollars here and there because they want to be involved in this big picture. It's not about me, right? It is about me. I get to have fun and run a race that's very special to my heart, but we're doing it for a great cause. And so at the end of the day, however it works out, it's going to be great, and we're going to have a good time. Looking forward to working with Derek Ming and his family operation and his family crew, and getting a lot of press for Travis and his group.
Yeah, I mean it's the Travis Mills Foundation talking about being able to support veterans, especially after they come back home, and in his case being able to go that extra step even in his situation. It shows the strength and the fight and the will of Americans, and I think that in a lot of ways you connect with him in your racing career because of that grind and that passion that you've had to have in the good and the bad. Details about the Oxford 250 before we get more into your career and what you're doing now on top of your driver development program. It's qualifying's 2 laps, and then you're going to have heat races before you get into a Maine, or are you going to have to lock in, or are you already locked into the show?
Well, nobody's locked into the show, and that's kind of the thrill of racing in this type. You have to qualify. So up in the Northeast, primarily it's heat races. So you end up drawing a pill to line up for your heat. It's not necessarily running the fastest lap. Down south, we do a lot of time trials, and time trials sometimes set up for your qualifying position in the heat. But, you could have the fastest car and draw pill 10 and end up starting 10th in the first heat. Or you might, pick the 12th pill, and if there's 11 cars in the first heat, well, you start first in the second heat. So there's a lot of uncertainty around qualifying, and that is definitely important to have a good performance in the race. Because if you're starting behind, it's super hard to catch up. But if folks want to be involved with what we just talked about with the foundation, I've got a link on my website. It's austintheriault.com/Oxford250. If they search my name up on Facebook, there's links all over the place in terms of basically redirecting to Travis's donation site. So we want to have as many people behind this whole thing as possible. It makes it a fan supported effort. It's important to have businesses writing big checks and stuff, but the regular people who can relate to Travis and what he's doing for our service members, that's what I want the takeaway to be, is that this was a community and an effort that the whole public came together to make this a success.
Yeah, I just brought it up on your website. See the picture of the car, running car number 45, a Ford Mustang body on there, and it brings back memories for me as a fan from your days, and some of the colors being similar to some of the colors you ran for Kenny Schrader. And I mean, I know that you come from the past and the ACT tour, talking about Dale Shaw and DJ and a lot of the guys up here in the Northeast running not just late models but mods and the whole TQs for that matter. I mean, there's a great obviously there's a great racing background up in here, and to be able to make it down south where you were, it isn't as easy for the Northeast guys. It may be quote unquote easier, but not really, to go and come back into the deep end in a sense. But hey, if you can go and put the right piece together and you have the right setup, everything is good. You put yourself in a position to win this coming weekend. But once upon a time, there you were driving against a lot of the guys you were teammates with, some of the guys that we see in the Cup Series. You even ran against some of them in your time in the Cup Series. You had experience after driving in past an ACT and running, going and racing for Dale Jr., Junior Motorsports, and you also ran for Brad Keselowski, which was where you were driving in his truck. You were part of the driver development pipeline, and I think that was a thing going back from in the early mid-2000s. That became a thing where every team had a driver development program, so some of them were more successful than others. I think in your case, you were connected to two organizations that over time had plenty of success. So connecting with two guys that are champion drivers and Hall of Famers, in Dale Jr.'s case, of course, and Brad will be one day. But I guess take us back to that time. I know it's been like a decade ago, but bring us back to that time in your career when you were on that path where Cup was probably at that top where you were thinking you were going to go and get there. What were those days like? How did you get the call to go for each of those guys, and how did that progress?
Well, racing's a small world. Looking back at it now, my racing in the ACT Tour and the PASS Tour up in the Northeast kind of opened up some doors for me. Believe it or not, one of the close friends of mine who is no longer racing now, but he was very well known up as far as super late model racing. He introduced me to Brad Keselowski's general manager of his truck team, who also managed the driver development program in the late models back then. And that was sort of the door into big time racing in North Carolina and the NASCAR world. It took some time for that relationship to develop. And as you can imagine, a lot of this is about relationships and building them, trusting people, and when a door opens, kind of walking through it, even if you don't know what's on the other side of it. That's what I did, early on. And looking back at it now, I made a couple moves that were great as far as like being at the right place and taking the opportunities and learning a lot. And then, maybe made some moves that were too quick and too fast. But we see that. I mean, that's just the nature of any competitive sport. You've got people around you and they're like, yeah, this is going to be great. You're going to do great. You're ready for it. And then you kind of fall flat in your face. And I felt like moving up from the ARCA series and moving from the ARCA series into the Xfinity series without having more big time experience on some of the bigger tracks was a little bit of a disadvantage for me. I thought the expectations were like, you ought to be able to get in this car and win. But the reality is the competition level at the some of the higher levels of NASCAR are so high, and the drivers that have the extra experience on the track with the tires, with the cars, they obviously have an advantage there. So I learned a lot in that experience. But coming back after that and running into the trucks, I think was a good sort of reset button for me. Back with Brad, who I'd already done some development work with previous years in his late model. So it was a natural transition, a natural fit. And that was slated to be, I think a great year for us. It was slated for me to progress as a driver. We were performing better every week. I was learning a lot about the tracks and the cars, and people were watching us. And then later in the year, that was when the Vegas crash happened, and that certainly kind of put the train off the tracks, if you want to call it that. And it was very frustrating, obviously, and at times I questioned whether or not I would be able to recover and continue. But it came together, and then we won the ARCA championship just a couple years after through a introduction to Kenny Schrader, who I didn't really know personally, and we know each other. Obviously, he followed racing and knew who the up and coming drivers were. But we were able to put that relationship together and take his team, not just me, but in collaboration with the crew chief and myself and the crew members who were really dedicated. We took that team from a top 10 team to a winning competitive team on a week to week basis. And and ended up winning a championship that year with like seven wins, and I think winning on all different types of configurations of racetracks which had never been done before in the ARCA series. So that was like my comeback in my planting the flag in the ground and saying, look, I belong here, and it was just a matter of finding the right situation and finding the right opportunity to grow and learn and be a competitor on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, and I that was one piece. I mean, we talk about Kenny Schrader. We were talking about him last week, being at age 68, winning a race in the Pinty Series on dirt. I mean, of course, it's Kenny Schrader. He knows how to race on anything, and he could race anything and win. But to have that connection, I remember in 2017 when you made that, when you joined his team, of course, money, some races you had sponsors, some races you didn't, but the reality was you went there and it almost seemed like you were going to be the guy every single week, and it didn't matter what it was, whether it was a super speedway, which of course you won Daytona, you won short tracks, which with the ARCA series there's plenty of great historic short tracks, you won on road courses, dirt. I mean, and it's Donnie Richardson, I think, is a crew chief, and that's his brother-in-law, I believe. And so that whole family connection, which I think it makes a lot of sense in your case, that connection with family, connection with a small knit group. I think that's where that season you destroyed, and it was similar to what Chase Briscoe's, somebody that I support. He had that having to come from the grind and having to be a grinder and working at Cunningham to go and get that opportunity. And it's interesting how those two connect, where you ended up being at Brad Keselowski Racing. I mean, I think I'd rather keep it in this vein, since you were able to get the opportunity in Cup. And yes, it was 5 races. Yes, it was short, but you were able to get that. And you got to race against some of those guys that you were around in Xfinity and in trucks. And do you sit here now and say, I was able to make it? Was it on my terms? But I was able to make it, and I was able to race with those guys, and I was able to make connections to where I'm able to continue what I'm doing right now? Or is there a little bit inside where you're like, I probably was on a path with, it's sometimes not to compare when you look at the guys that were at or at Brad's team, like Ryan Blaney or Tyler Reddick, or now Ross Chastain, Briscoe, Cindric, et cetera, Is there a little bit of a kind of what if to that, or have you moved on at this point?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I think the truth is, I'm very confident that given the right opportunity, I would have been able to win a NASCAR championship. But we have to. What I've learned is that we have to take what life gives us, and I've come a long way from racing a Pontiac Grand Am at Spud Speedway, a 3rd-mile racetrack behind a potato field in Bristol County, Maine, a population of 25,000 people. So that's I think the perspective that pulls me out of that. Like, what if? The where people can get stuck in that zone, and then I think of somebody like Travis Mills, who just said, you know what, after 9/11, I'm just going to go off and serve my country, and then comes back not able to live life anywhere close to where he was before. And here we're talking about racing and winning championships, and that's fun, and that's our career, but it's not quite the same thing. So I'm really happy in Cindric and Reddick and those guys that I raced with that have had good. I think I could have. Not that we would have beat them all the time, but I think I would have been right there with them, winning races and championships. And now I also still sort of have the opportunity with the driver development work. It's at a different level, but I was telling somebody recently, it feels even much better, to be honest, watching somebody else be successful than it was when I was in victory lane. I remember when one of the ARCA driver, or one of the up and coming drivers, Landon Lewis, won. Was it spring? I don't know. It's either spring. I think it was DuQuoin in 2020 or 2021. Working with Ron Hornaday with him, the emotions that we were feeling watching him be successful and winning his first ARCA race and all that, it was not containable. We couldn't contain the emotions there. For me, when I was racing, it was like, oh, well, this is just a great day and let's move on to the next race. It's not the same thing. So I still get a lot out of it. And you got me now?
Yeah. I lost you there for a second.
What I was just saying is it's different, but it's still the same in a lot of ways.
And you brought up Landon Lewis and the great Ron Hornaday. I guess we can talk about that. So who are some of the guys that we should be looking at that you're working with at the moment, and the series that they're in? Because Landon Lewis is somebody that here in this year has been able to run some truck races, and they've made a lot of course, because it's a truck series, they're going to focus on, and Ron Hornaday's been there, they're going to talk to the 4-time series champion, arguably the greatest driver in the history of the series. But you've been a part of his development too. Who else? Who are some of the other guys that you've been, and ladies that you've been able to work with, that we should be looking at here? Yeah,
well, I can't take all credit for Landon, because Ron was really the one that took him under his wing even before I knew who Landon was, and back in his early teenage years. But one of the first drivers that I got started with when I went off on my own to do the driver sort of development work was a late model driver out of Chesterfield, Virginia, Howie DiSavino. And his story's really interesting too, because he's been through a lot of life challenges. Lost his mom to brain cancer recently, last year, and he's taking some time off, understandably, to process through that. And so we're trying to get him back on the track. Ron and I and his daughter Candace recently signed another driver, Hudson Balger, who's a up and coming late model driver out of Georgia. Works with Brett Reagan. Brett Reagan's actually his crew chief, related to David and his dad. So there's more folks that we work with, but I think it's important to realize, when we remind these drivers often, it may seem like from the outside looking in, anybody with money is successful in racing, but we're reminded time and time again that it's not all about the money. It's about putting in the effort and putting in the extra effort when nobody's looking, and being dedicated to it. Especially when you're having like a rough spot, or you're frustrated because you're struggling. Those times especially is when I think a driver is made. Drivers, I don't necessarily think drivers are born. I think they're sort of made. And the ones that are successful in the long run, and the ones that really truly get the long-term opportunities, are the ones that have more than just raw talent. They may have raw talent, but they really need to develop, and they need to understand the extra work and the dedication it takes to be successful. And that's why having somebody like Ron, who's come up through the old days in the sport when you had to have talent and you had to be dedicated to it, he can explain that to them much better than any of us drivers can in a different era. But also my perspective, understanding a little bit more of how the business side of the sport works, and the necessity of being a spokesperson outside of the race car and getting all of that figured out is also important too.
And I think it's something to be able to give those different perspectives, having the old school mentality that is Ron Hornaday, and all the people that have joking around about the people that have slept on Ron Hornaday's couch in his basement. Well, then you have your perspective in that you've been driving on a 3rd mile racetrack in your home state to get to NASCAR's highest levels, and also be able to hold championship hardware. I think but it also, another thing that it is similar, I think, for both of you guys, and is something that probably your drivers will benefit from more than what we see with some of the guys and girls that are out there. I think there's a level of humbleness and awareness for what it truly means. And I think being able to, that realism and having that feeling of understanding of that struggle, because it's not all lush green mountains and rainbows racing. You're not gonna win every time. I mean, Kevin Harvick was talking to his kid for one of his videos on Stewart Haas Racing. You don't win every time. He's literally telling his 10-year-old son that. But you guys have been through it. You guys have won, but it's not always winning, and there's a way to handle that. There are times when you're going to be angry and there's going to be bad times. But if you at least handle it with grace, there's a better chance that over time that'll come back for you. Have you ever had to have those conversations over your time working with some of your drivers and kind of using, I think some of the examples we seem to be having more recently, has that become more of a issue in with this generation of drivers, where the lack of respect is there? Maybe they don't fear as much as they used to when you started coming up, or even when Ron was coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes back to the rush for a lot of drivers to move up as quickly as possible. You know, when I was racing ACT, how about maybe even more than half the field was veterans of the series, running local and running regional across the Northeast. And these are drivers that have won races and championships. And part of their responsibility was to put the up and coming drivers in their place when they stepped out of line. You don't really have that as much in the grassroots level of racing, because it's almost like a revolving door of just new drivers coming in, and then they're there for not even a year and they'll move up. And by the time they get to higher levels of the sport, they've never been put in their place, and they've never been taught those values of respect and hard work. And sometimes, and this is maybe a percentage of drivers, some drivers just, all they've ever had to do is show up to the racetrack and put a helmet on. They've never had to work on their own cars, and they've never had to, market to sponsors themselves, and never had to fix their own cars when they've wrecked. And that's just an example, I think, of a percentage of the drivers that are coming into the sport that really need to be set up well for a wake-up call, and that's the role of the veteran drivers, I think, and they need to play the veteran drivers need to step up and play a little bit of a bigger role, but it also starts before they get there. Like I said, the short tracks series across the country need to prepare and make sure that they're set up to have a healthy feeder system with some veterans that still are there year after year to help coach and mentor these drivers, because a series just with young drivers with not a lot of experience may be fun and cool to watch, but it's not conducive to building superstars like Dale Jr. and Jimmy Johnson and Kevin Harvick and Ron Hornaday and Tony Stewart, and that was a different time back then, and if we can try to get back to that a little bit, that would be good.
Yeah, and so I figured you would be a person that I would know, because you've been on both sides of it. You've had to work your way up, but now you're on the other side and trying to help the next generation of drivers. And when you have talents like a Landon Lewis, who has the potential to be something big, trying to connect with him in that way, I think could be a big step in the right direction for his career. But then also you have the other support systems he has in mind. Josh, you wanted to go and connect connecting with people in another sense with something that Austin, you're doing right now.
Yeah, so I as a politician, working for that district in Maine.
I credit my upbringing for preparing me for the national stage, sort of the big time stage. And even though we're pretty humble up here and we don't like to boast, some of the values that I think are this area is known for are things like hard work, being humble, being respectful, paying your dues, not being afraid to work underneath somebody and ask questions. Those are the sort of things I think, northern Maine and other parts of the state of Maine are known for. So long story short, I felt very much sort of a duty to return the favor, not only to my family, but to the area and the folks that I've grown up around here with, and families who have spent all their lives here, working very hard and trying to make a living and trying to raise a family. I felt the duty to give back in some ways that people don't traditionally want to do anymore, and that's being involved in politics is sort of a dirty topic nowadays, with the world being so divided and everybody being divisive about any issue that you talk about. This opportunity to be a legislator has, believe it or not, been an amazing opportunity to bridge the gap between all different people from all different backgrounds and different political parties. We're, at least up here in our district, we're not overly political in this sort of a district like this, and being a state legislator, you're focused on things like, making sure the roads are good, making sure people have their questions answered when they're having problems, like with getting their taxes done. And that's the resource that I enjoy giving back to my constituents with right now. And it was a natural sort of next step for me, because our longtime legislator, who had been there for many, many, many decades, had termed out. And so, there was an open seat, and I had always been involved and interested in politics from a very young age. When racing became more of a focus for me, I put that aside. I sort of put the political focus aside and focused on racing. But when I decided that I wasn't going to do the full-time stock car racing anymore, it was around the time when the seat opened up. So I said, well, if I'm going to try this out and try to make a difference, I might as well do it now, because I don't know if there'll ever be a better opportunity to get involved. And especially being it being the area that I grew up around, I understand a lot of the issues that people are facing, and a lot of the challenges that we're facing, and I understand the culture and the people. So that's why I decided to get involved.
Do you see yourself going further in this career, going further into the state legislature, and possibly even going up into Washington?
Well, that's a good question. What do you think? You think I should stay here, or should I move up?
Well, I mean, it depends on, I think, what you like doing. If you feel serving on a more local level, I know things at the national level tend to get murky, and there's a lot more politics involved there. So, I think you should do what you think is best for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we'll have to see what happens. I mean, I guess you never rule anything out. It depends what doors open, and where people feel like I can help them out the best. Like I said, I'm a team player, and I feel like Maine is a state where we have the potential to be a great state, and in some ways even better than we are now. There's only about 1.3 million people, and there's definitely more land than there is people. So it's a great place to come vacation. It's a great place to raise a family. It's fairly safe, and there's believe it or not, there's a lot to do up here, depending on the season. So I want to help. I want to help our state out any way I possibly can. If that's the local level or beyond, it just depends on what happens.
Well, I'll say that you fundraise really well, since I'm wearing one of your shirts for your fundraising for your racing career. So that's one big piece if you wanted to go further in your political career. But you're doing this, you're sitting in your car. You said the noise would be a lot less there, so I guess your family is in the house. Tell us a little bit about everything with your family and how they're playing a part in this return before we let you go, since we've kept you on probably a little longer than I thought we would, but I appreciate the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I got my fire suit back here, Bar Harbor Bank and Trust fire suit with Travis Mills on the chest, so that's ready to go. Hasn't been used yet. But not only has my family been supportive, really the whole area and state has been supportive of what we're trying to do here. So that's exactly what I was saying, is we stick together and we support each other. And I'm anxious to see what we can come up with in terms of funding for the foundation after, the dust settles on Monday morning. And we'll make a difference, big or small, we'll make a difference. And I want Travis and his to know that they're not alone in this fight. This is a big problem, making sure that these veterans can get back on their feet and get their lives back on track, and especially their families who also kind of tough times when their loved ones are going through traumatic moments in their life. The least we can do is try to play our part in helping them as best we can.
And definitely for anyone that's listening to the show, we'll have it out obviously before the race happens this weekend. But if you wanted to watch the race online, you can see it on Racing America, and hopefully Austin Theriault will be up in the mix with a chance to win this race. Is one of the biggest races in late model racing, and in the Bar Harbor Bank and Trust number 45 Ford with help from the Travis Mills Foundation. You can go on austinterrio.com/Oxford250, as Austin mentioned earlier, to go and donate. Thank you so much for the time, Austin. It was great talking to you. It's great to talk to somebody that, for us, both of us as NASCAR fans, from our fandom and our time together as when we became friends, we watched you going up the ranks, and now that you continue to be involved in the sport in such a positive way, and also now you're helping your town and kind of showing what I think America's all about, just helping those in need, but also helping and giving back. We thank you so much for the time, and good luck this weekend in the Oxford 250. Hopefully we get to see you holding up the trophy and making a lot of money for the Travis Mills Foundation as well.
Well, we'll need all the luck we can get, guys, but thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you so much, man, and have a good night. And we'll definitely keep track of you and your car and your weekend this coming weekend at Oxford Plains Speedway. It's going to be a great race. They have, it's one of the toughest races, obviously, to win for somebody like Austin. 4 top 5 finishes in his career in this race in 5 starts, so making his 6th start. And coming off of a bit of a time away, so it isn't easy. But figure if there's somebody that could probably come in, and after a couple years away, I think Austin Theriault is probably that guy. So thanks again, Austin, and we will see what happens. We'll talk about it definitely on episode 184 of the GSP. Hopefully, we get to talk about you winning the race. But either way, we could talk about, you can let us know some of the details after the race and what has been fundraised, and how you guys been able to help.
Perfect, guys. Take care. We'll hopefully talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah. So that's Austin Theriault. Good time there, talking about a whole different range of things. Josh was put on the spot, asked if he should go and run for more. I was like, yeah, why not? You're a good fundraiser. Yeah. But, in his case, it's interesting to come back after being out of the seat for 4 years, and that injury, which was a game changer for him. That accident with Tyler Reddick at Freak Deal at Las Vegas, kind of the way the careers went in the separate paths. But in the end, Austin Theriault has used this opportunity, and he hasn't been bitter about it. He's been very positive, still won a championship, worked with the great Kenny Schrader, and now he gets to work with the next generation of racers and try to bring a more positive outlook to the sport. We didn't get to go and talk about what else we were going to get into for tonight. We'll get into the Cup and Xfinity at Watkins Glen, talk about the points situation, especially in Cup. We'll talk about Fall Brawl and fantasy draft there, and NFL for training camp updates for our teams and anything else that kind of stands out. Roundup is around pretty decent amount of racing there. We'll make previews of Formula One with the Fish Lips Grand Prix, IndyCar at Gateway, the last oval of the season, Cup and Xfinity at Daytona with the Tate Fogelman algorithm, plus trucks at Milwaukee, before Josh lets us know all things going on in iRacing and gaming, and we close the deal. So, similar to Indianapolis last weekend, it was very processional, very spread out race at Watkins Glen. There was a dominant figure. His name was William Byron. His career year continues dominating. I mean, it's not unusual for the 24 car to be dominant at Watkins Glen. There was once upon a time when Jeff Gordon used to win there every time, and kind of looked like Jeff Gordon out there last Sunday at Watkins Glen in the Go Bowling at the Glen, going out there and getting his fifth victory of the season, and and that's going and putting himself right smack dab at the head of the field. He's leads the amount of playoff points, but he'll probably be no worse than, I don't think he's going to be any worse than third playoff points wise heading into Darlington here in a couple of weeks' time. The Go Bowling at the Glen saw William Byron win Stage 2, finish second in Stage 1 to Michael McDowell, who led 17 laps before a litany of issues started for him. McDowell ended up finishing dead last, even though he might have had a car to possibly win this race too. Also had a pit road violation going through too many pits. Basically, once he fell out of the race and fell away, William Byron was head and shoulders above everyone, led 66 of the race's 90 laps. The race finished in less than 2 hours. Dennis Hamlin finished second after starting on pole. The top five was basically the top five most of the day. Christopher Bell finished third, AJ Allmendinger fourth, Keebler Gibbs fifth. Martin Truex, Christopher Buescher, Tyler Reddick, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano round out the top 10. Todd Gilliland, one of his better finishes of the season, in 11th. Bubba Wallace, probably the best road course result from start to finish in the weekend in his Cup career, finished 12th. Richard in 13th. Kyle Busch 14th, Brad Keselowski 15th, and we'll mention Kevin Harvick, who finished 21st. I mentioned Brad and Kevin because both those guys, with William Byron's fifth win of the year, locked themselves into the playoffs because they earned enough points to make the playoff, which leaves one spot open. Josh, I mean, this race was pretty straightforward. There was only one caution in basically 2/3 of the way through the race, which was interesting in itself. A guy who has been very good at Watkins Glen and over in the past, his teammate William Clyde Elliott II, ran out of fuel, and basically that was the only thing that stopped the race. Otherwise, it was clean and green, and it was similar to Indianapolis. Once Michael McDowell took himself out of the race, and then he had other issues with his car, Byron had no resistance. And, I mean, Junior talked about it on his show, and it's become the common theme every week. What is wrong? How can we change the competition with the next-gen car? But I think this is essentially a GT3 car that's way heavier than a GT3 car with about the same amount of horsepower. I think we have what we have unless they make drastic changes. And I mean, Junior basically harps on the fact that the tire doesn't fall off. AJ Allmendinger got out of his car and said that they were running qualifying laps the whole entire every stint, which
That's
I mean, when you're running the road, that's road racing these days. And I mean, I guess let's get your thoughts on the race itself. I mean, I was sitting there doing my fantasy draft for one of my fantasy leagues for a good amount of the race, and then I was talking to friends and whatever, and trying to get other things together for our league. So to say that I really wasn't all that preoccupied with watching the race, with how interesting it was, kind of says how interesting it really was.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was preoccupied playing Dungeons and Dragons with some friends before the race, and I was kind of keeping an eye on the, through Twitter and watching the leaderboard on NASCAR.com. So, yeah, with the way it was going, I didn't really have any real motivation to really turn on the broadcast until the very end just to see what would happen. But I followed online as much as I could, and it seemed like it's going to be pretty spread out and everything. And without the stage cautions, it really makes things strung out, which I was okay with. And of course, there was opportunity for this race to be the first Cup race since Talladega in October 2002 to win or go through the entire event without having a caution, and that would have been interesting just for the fact, I guess, and ended up not happening, of course. It turns into a strategy race when that comes about. Then, of course, with the way that this car is, I think you hit it right on the head. Allmendinger running qualifying laps, and that's basically what it's turned into. And look at the other big road racing events, especially with how durable race cars are in general. Even at endurance races like Le Mans or the Rolex, you're running qualifying laps for an entire stint. And so there isn't, when you're running it consistently like that, you don't really have a whole lot of error there. So, that's part of it. I think also the fact that they've basically eliminated track limits at this track to an extent. You're allowed to now go way over on the exit of turn one. Way past the curbs, going into the runoff. Turn 7 in the carousel, you're allowed to run way off there. The left-hander, before the start-finish line, you go way off on there. All of those places, and of course the bus stop as well. All of those places have, were gravel traps or grass in the past, and over the years, because of safety, which can't blame them on that, to try to prevent cars from flying into the barriers and everything. They've paved it off now, but now that that's been all paved off, of course, if it's paved, it's fair game, I guess, on the road courses, and you're allowed to go off onto that. So there isn't any real penalty now for going way off into that. So that I think also leads to the spread outness of this race, because I think if you had to respect the track limits, I think maybe there would be more opportunities for mistakes, especially if you go offline and go into the grass, or get a penalty for exceeding track limits and all that stuff. So I think that's part of it as well, especially at place like Watkins Glen that has that type of design built into it there. So yeah, I mean, this race definitely not a whole lot happened. I think Michael McDowell doesn't have any problems. He probably goes back to back, but of course, that didn't happen. And then, basically track position race from that point, and William Byron goes out and wins. And of course, I think the big storyline here is the bubble on the the playoffs. Of course, Bubba Wallace ran back half of the top 10 for a good portion of this race, ran well, ends up getting in 12th position there, and scored stage points in both stages. So, he did everything he needed to do, to his best ability to put distance between himself and Ty Gibbs. So it's, going to be interesting there. Of course, the issue with Chase Elliott running out of gas in the chicane. Of course, big controversy there. with Chase, his crew chief, Alan Gustafson, miscalculating the fuel mileage or not getting the right information for whatever reason, which I guess that happens. And of course, now some fans are calling for him to be fired at the end of the season, which, that's probably unnecessary. And I think it's more, the fact that they're under a lot of pressure, and, when you've missed races due to injury, and then you put yourself in a bad spot by getting suspended for another race, then, it all kind of leads to more desperation to try to get into the field for the playoffs, and then, leads to taking risks like this. And then, of course, also the, factoring in that you don't really have a whole lot of room for errors. So, it's pretty big. And of course, this weekend at Daytona, it's going to be their final shot. So, we'll talk about it later, but, it heightens the intensity for that battle, of course, for that last playoff spot.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole Alan Gustafson, they want to run him out the door. I know you're a Dale Jr. fan, and you've had that. You aren't to the extreme of some segments of the junior fandom, but they wanted to tar and feather guys like Pete Rondeau. They wanted to get rid of Lance McGrew, et cetera, over the years in Junior's time. Of course, he wasn't coming off of a championship or being in the final four of a championship like they have in the current format. It's been a bad year for Clyde, self-inflicted, of course, with what he's doing outside of the racetrack, and also right-rearing Denny Hamlin. But when you look at the example is what Kyle Busch did back in 2015, albeit I think there are some things in place that probably made it a little different for him, but I think there is similarities. If he had that, if he had the intensity, had that focus to want to come back and he could go out there and win, when your teammate's going out there and winning in William Byron, you also have Larson that's out there. Then I think he could have went out there and won races. Now, do I think that he's out of the mix to go and win at Daytona? Hell no. He could go out there and do what his dad did many times, which was win at Daytona and get himself into the playoffs. I think NASCAR is hoping that happens. But he hasn't run well enough to make the field. And what's ironic about it is there's too many cars in this playoff as it is. I think there should only be 12. I mean, that's one of those things that I've said numerous times, that there's too many cars or trucks. There should be 12 in Cup or 10 in Cup, but I think they can't go back to the 10. So we'll do 12, 10 in Xfinity and 8 in trucks. I think that would make more sense. It would simplify the elimination process, and it would put more emphasis on actually having to perform. In the end, it would be bad to say, oh, well, Kevin Harvick is in a must-win situation so he can stay in the playoffs in his final year of his career. And then Brad Keselowski, his teammate, has won 2 races. Well, that would be more intriguing. Kevin Harvick, who's not exactly known as a big-time super speedway racer in recent years. And then Brad, whose last win came on a super speedway and has shown great pace. Would that be more intriguing than, Clyde has to go and backdoor his way into the playoffs, or Alex Bowman has to backdoor his way into the playoffs? I think has a little bit more intrigue than what we have coming in to this weekend. But with 16 drivers last year, 15 drivers had won, and a 16th driver won to get into the play, or 14 drivers had won, and a 15th driver won to get in the last race, and Ryan Blaney made it in. So in the end, we get 2 points, guys, possibility of 3. Bubba did what he had to do. He's 32 points ahead of Keebler Gibbs and 43 ahead of Daniel Suarez. Suarez came home in 22nd. Ross Chastain was 18th. Justin Marks was in Austria at the MotoGP race and flew a late night flight back to North Carolina to take his kids to school, and was jet lagged and doing all that, and went on and did his hit with Moody and talked about how slow they were this past weekend. something to be concerned about if you are Trackhouse going into this playoff compared to a year ago. But they feel pretty confident with Suarez. He's been in a position to win at super speedways in recent races. And it is a wild card. I mean, Dillon basically was non-existent the whole year last year, and utilized a nice rainstorm and watching the whole entire field wreck to go and backdoor his way into the playoffs. I think Reddick got eliminated in the first round too, which was kind of weird how that whole thing worked. But there was other extenuating circumstances going on there. I mean, Kyle Busch has been wildly inconsistent, so I doubt that Dillon's going to do it again, but who knows? Stranger things have happened. Justin Haley won for Spire a few years ago in that race, so we can see what happens with that. So yeah, I was going to go, I'm going to go and get into the points just out of right now, the playoff points prior to giving out the bonus points. Truex right now is in a pretty solid position, 39 points ahead of Denny Hamlin to get the 15 playoff point bonus. Byron is going to be up there right in the mix. Kyle Busch has 3 wins along with Truex. Denny Hamlin is second in points, has 2 wins. Byron's third, Bell fourth, Larson fifth. Brad Keselowski's actually sixth in points, which is really interesting. From 6th all the way through 11th, which is Kyle Busch, is only separated by 9 points. And if you add Tyler Reddick into that, so from 6th through 12th is only separated by 14, which if you take out some of these other people, it would actually be a really good points race. That counts Keselowski, Buescher, Chastain, Blaney, Harvick, Kyle Busch, and Reddick. So that's something that's definitely an interesting piece that could play a role in the playoff run. Logano, Dal Walsh Jr., Richard, and Michael McDowell is 17th in points at the moment. But of course he's won a race, so he'll be in. So you go and take the top 2 guys that haven't won. It's a 4-point gap between Keselowski and Harvick. So that's something to look at. That would have been something to look at if another winner had came in that hadn't won. The battle would have been between those 2 guys, similar to what Blaney and Martin Truex had last year. And they had to come right to the bitter end to go and see who would make it. And it was like a couple of positions, literally at Daytona in the final race of the regular season for Blaney to make the playoffs, and Martin Truex ending up finishing 17th in points. But those 2 guys have a chance to win the race and give themselves some extra points going into Darlington, a racetrack where both of them have won. And Darrell Walsh Jr. has to worry about everybody else behind him, whether it's Gibbs or Suarez, Allmendinger, the Hendrick guys, etc., etc. But we'll get into that more later. I was going to name the show Clean 'Em Out, but I didn't think it was appropriate since we had Austin on the show.
It's decision time.
It definitely is decision time. But in the case of Sam Mayer, he decided that in the latest installment of the hatred between Sam Mayer and Keebler Gibbs, that he was going to go and clean out Keebler Gibbs going into turn 1 at Watkins Glen in the I was going to call it Zippo 250 because it's had so many damn sponsors over the years. What is it called? The Wawa 250 is this weekend. The Shriners Children's Hospital 200 at Watkins Glen. Sam Mayer and Gibbs had dominated the race. It basically was straightforward for him for the most part. No real resistance from anybody else. He won both stages. Justin Allgaier finished second in one. Bowman finished second in the other. There was only, there was only 5 or 9 or 6 drivers who led the race. There were a few more cautions. pretty straightforward in terms of who was up there. But the real story, Gibbs led 70 of the race's 86 laps. It was scheduled for 82. Was the incident. They got the previous restart. Gibbs went and basically took away his line going through the S's, and Mayer didn't feel like he wanted to give up that line and got into the fence, similar to Tony Stewart and Jeff Gordon back in the year 2000 when Gordon was going for 4 in a row at Watkins Glen. Mayer was not happy about it. It was on the radio. His spotter Kevin Hamlin was trying to back him down and say basically, well, you would have done the same if it was your spot, and just let's focus on whatever. Well, he understood that, but I think he also, and Dale Jr. said it on his show, that he took that as a basically a green light to go and send Keebler to the moon. And whether there was intent to do it or not, he wheel hopped into turn 1, hit the curb, and promptly sent Gibbs into the runoff area, which you brought up, Josh, in terms of how much runoff. We remember the days of Dale Jarrett, I think in 2001, qualified on pole, which he was god-awful at road courses, and he went into the sand trap in turn 1, I think, twice in that race after starting on pole. Jimmy Johnson famously flew into that sand trap and hit the styrofoam blocks and then jumped out and celebrated because he was alive. And now you have so much runoff, they use it as racetrack. I think they need to, like we talk about track limits, it's time to go and put those turtle curbs over there, and there should be like literally whatever, just over maybe a car width and a half off of the racing, right off the track, put turtles there, so you can't use that as a groove. So it actually make you actually have to drive the corners properly, and I think they also need to do that out of the carousel, because it takes away. It's gotten stupid, really, and I think they brought it up on some of the shows. And utilizing runoff essentially as racetrack, I think is pretty obnoxious and ridiculous. But runoff wasn't the issue there. Sam Mayer decided he was going to take it in his own hands. He went and cleaned out Keebler Gibbs. Plenty of people became fans of Sam Mayer, including me. But I've already been somewhat aware of his issues with that Smurf. And then Gibbs went and doubled down on it after the race and basically threw shade at him with his comments, and proving once again why people think that he's a tool who, with nepotism playing a big part of why he's got the opportunities that he's had. Yeah, he has talent, but he's a dick. And if his grandfather didn't own a race team, he wouldn't be able to have A-plus equipment to go out there and run into and over anybody and everybody. But, that's beside the point. He dominated the race. Mayer decided that he wasn't going to get run over again by Ty Gibbs, so he used him up. Austin Hill was butthurt because he was collateral damage, but at the end of the day, Austin Hill thinks he's 30 years old and he wants to stay in the Xfinity Series. So in my mind, I don't know what the hell he's whining about. If the team he drives for, the only reason he isn't in a cup car is because the grandfather of one of the drivers is still there, is the owner of the team. Or else he could probably be in the 3-car next year. And that would make more sense than who they have driving the 3-car. But he was all butthurt about Sam Mayer doing that. Mayer had to go and pass Sheldon Creed. And this is how I'll go and post it to you, Josh. They had oil. It was oiled down on the track. They didn't red flag it. The cleaning job that they did was mediocre at best. They usually would red flag the race and try to do a proper job of cleaning it. With the instance of what happened with Mayer and Gibbs happen, I think probably would happen anyway. Would Sheldon Creed have been able to hold off Sam Mayer, even with all the stuff that happened there, if the track was clean, possibly. But it's not the first time they've had a track covered in oil, and that's led to an interesting finish. They posted that as one of NASCAR's classic races. But I guess you had everything there at the end of that race, Josh. Tell us what you thought about the incident with Gibbs and Mayer, and the final few laps of the race, the green white checkered itself. I mean, talking about retaliation or some of the other stuff, I think that's probably for another time. But I think we know it's going to come because that's what Ty Gibbs is all about.
Yeah, I mean, I think with this race, definitely kind of another chapter in the Ty Gibbs Sam Mayer rivalry. Of course, they've had their dust-ups in the past in this series, but the first one with Ty, dooring Sam Mayer into the wall in the S's. Obviously Mayer didn't like that, and like you said, he talked about it. And of course, I think once you get to that level where you're talking about it on the radio, and then the broadcast, highlights that, then you definitely have to take action and follow through with that. And he definitely followed through with that. Of course, drove it in really deep into the first turn on the restart, and just completely cleaned out Ty Gibbs. So of course, Ty's he's got that style where he wants to be able to do unto others but not let them do unto him. So he is gonna have to learn to I guess race more fairly, I guess, and everything. So I mean, Brandon Jones got wrecked by him last year, and there's been several opportunities there when Ty goes into the Xfinity. It could have been Brandon Jones there if he was there. I mean, he's a junior car too, so that could have happened to him, I guess. But just making a point there. But it's Sam Mayer goes and does that, and moves Ty Gibbs out of the way, and of course, and now Ty Gibbs is pissed off at the race. And then of course you mentioned Austin Hill, and I mean, I do think Austin Hill has a little bit more to be aggrieved by it, because he only has 9 points to John H. Nemechek in the playoff standings there for the regular season championship. So there's a little bit of merit there to be upset about that because of what happened, of course, and being collateral damage, and running in the for this championship. Of course, every point matters, and if he is able to continue on and not get affected by that, then that's better for him going into the end of this regular season in a few weeks for the Xfinity Series. So definitely there's reason there to be upset about it. And everything, but it's just another chapter in this rivalry between these two drivers. And then, of course, you mentioned the track conditions and everything, and I think if it's regular track conditions and normal, and there's no issue with speedy dry or oil or anything like that, then I think Sheldon Creed probably has an opportunity to go and finally win in the Xfinity Series. But Sam Mayer, of course, now last couple of weeks, won at Road America and a similarly chaotic finish over there, and suddenly now has become a road course guy in this series, and now has 2 wins. So now I think going forward, we have to look at him as a potential threat to win on road courses, and goes out and similar finish kind of to 2012 in the Cup Series. Famous finish from that year and everything, and now Sam Mayer goes out and wins this race. So don't know if he's truly a championship contender on the level of Austin Hill or John Hunter Nemechek, but certainly I think road racing wise, definitely somebody who's kind of emerged as a threat there that I think we're have to look out for later on this season at Charlotte Roval, and then possibly in future seasons in the Xfinity, and maybe even in the Cup Series.
Yeah, it's hard to tell what Mayer is going to bring to the table. We got a few races left in the regular season, but I think getting over the hump, being able to win a couple of races in kind of dramatic fashion here the last few weeks, getting over the hump in that sense, I think is huge for him and Marty Lindley and that whole one team. I don't think talent has been a question in his case. It's just being able to put races together, putting himself in a position. I don't think the end of that rivalry is, we've seen the end of it. I think he will be in the Cup Series at some point, and it'll probably rear its head again. And Gibbs is gonna continue to have opportunities to race Xfinity. I think the rule is after 2 or 3 years into your Cup Series career, until you've run more than 3 years in Cup, then you can run as many as you want. So Gibbs is going to be able to run a lot more races, and the likelihood of them running into each other, being in each other's paths, is highly likely. We'll get, you brought up, I mean, I get the points thing, and that's fine and well in terms of, let me just go through the results first. I'd be remiss if I didn't. So Mayer, Creed, Kligerman, Ross Chastain, Connor Mozak. Car was destroyed. I mean, he flew, he did a tank slapper getting up towards the inner loop, saved it. John Hunter actually got a top 10. Cole Custer, the don't give a fuck meter was pegged, driving a high point car, no less. Chandler Smith, Alex Bowman driving the Hendrick 17, and Jeb Burton rounded out the top 10. Hill finished 14th. Allgaier 17th, is involved a wreck that was triggered by Cole Custer. Gibbs 17th. Josh Berry spun late in the race, finished 20th. Riley Herbst had suspension issues and gearbox issues, finished 35th. The points standings going into Daytona with 3 races to go in the regular season. Austin Hill still leads the regular points over John Hunter, but John Hunter has more wins. It's a 9-point gap. John Hunter has a 7-point lead in playoff points, so that's going to go to the end. Allgaier's minus 34. So you have the Daytona, you have Darlington, and Kansas in the Xfinity regular season before they start their playoffs at Bristol. And they'll run 3 SMI tracks for the whole first round. They have an off week in between randomly. But so yeah, 3 races to go, including Daytona. Allgaier third. That's really about for the regular season. Custer, Mayer, Berry, solid, all gonna make the playoff. Chandler Smith's in. The mix really starts after that with Hemrick, Creed, Herbst, and Kligerman. Herbst right now is on the cut line, or Hemrick is plus 28, Creed plus 22, Riley Herbst is plus 3 over Parker Kligerman. So all the incidents and stuff that happened at Watkins Glen has made it really a 4-horse race for 3 drivers. You add, Sammy Smith has won a race, and so has Jeb Burton, so both those guys are in. Excuse me. And then you have all these other drivers that are outside of that, the Bruckshot Jones of the world, Moffitt, Gralla, Retzloff, Jeremy Clements, who won at Daytona last August, amongst them, that could go and be a spoiler in this whole points battle with 3 races to go. So we'll get into the Cup and Xfinity racing more in detail later on with Daytona itself and our previews for that. We had our Fall Brawl draft this past weekend, Josh, on Sunday evening. It was definitely entertaining. A handful of us were actually on the live stream, the Zoom stream, and it was cool to go and talk and BS. You were in a Starbucks doing the draft, so that was entertaining. Going and kind of throwing salvos here and there, but really it was an interesting draft. A lot of picks that probably were off the norm, off of the usual ADP. What were your thoughts and what are your takeaways from the draft for this year. With now we got a couple of weeks to go before the regular season actually begins.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of on the road. Like, I had been at a friend's house and had my laptop on me and everything. And then I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to make it back to my house in time for the draft. So I was like, well, I'll just stop in the Starbucks. So they have internet and everything. So I did that. But I mean, the draft itself, first round, very quarterback heavy. I don't think we've ever had it quarterback heavy like that, but Vic right off the bat set the tone and went quarterback with Mahomes and everything. So that happened, and then you picked up Lamar Jackson. Joe Burrow went very quickly as well. So I saw that happening, but I decided to go running back. Nick Chubb's a good running back, of course, so I went with him. And then second round, I was like, well, wonder when will be time to get a quarterback with all the quarterbacks going off, and Justin Herbert went off, and I was like, well, if Herbert's going off the board, then I'm going to pick Trevor. And so that was the whole reasoning to get Trevor. And it's interesting because looking at the draft grades, post draft, Yahoo gives me an F on the draft grade, and they're like, your worst pick was Trevor Lawrence, and everything. And first of all, I'm going to say that I think the grades are not accurate because it's factoring in its standard player rankings for average draft position, and I don't think it's taking into the account that we're a 2-quarterback lead with super flex. So if it took all that into factor, then I think if it factored all of that into the equation, then I think it would be a lot different grades, and we would see a lot more balanced grades and everything. I will say, go ahead.
No, I said truth on that.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think it's accurate. And I mean, it gave Vic an A+, which probably is true. And I mean, Wilson got a C on that, I think, and you got a D-. So those are the ones I remember off the top of my head. So yeah, I mean, I don't think, and I think Joe got a D also, or a C- and everything. And so I don't think it's accurate from that same way. I think everybody, if you told them that, I think everybody would agree. But the draft, I mean, my team, I mean, I have Garrett Wilson, which that's going to be questionable because, Aaron Rodgers is there. I mean, it's a bit of a stretch because, he hasn't really, I mean, he had a decent year last year, but this year, of course, can be interesting with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback on a new team. So we'll see how that goes. Debo is, of course, as proven as ever, but of course, maybe he's going to get a little bit of reduced touches, I guess, compared to what he was able to do rushing wise, because now they have Christian McCaffrey on that team, so there's going to be maybe some touches taken away there. And now he's full time now. Of course, got in a trade in the middle of last year and everything, so that'll be interesting. Kenneth Walker, I got him as well. Solid running back. Picked up Travis Etienne, of course. Decided to take him up there. Should have a big year rushing wise, and of course always a threat receiving, and I think he's somebody that can line up on the outside as well and take passes there, so that'll be interesting. Brock Purdy, picked him up. Still think he's going to have a solid year as a quarterback. Probably should have went double quarterback to start off the draft. First round should have picked Joe Burrow, I guess, while he was still there, and then taking Trevor, and then that would have been a good stack there. So we'll see. And then picked up Mark Andrews. I think he's one of 3 good tight ends that you got to have on your team. Christian Watson, I think he's a good player too, although it's questionable with Jordan Love as quarterback. Michael Pittman might be a good wide receiver for the young Anthony Richardson. And then kind of went a little bit running back heavy at the towards the end. Damian Harris. Honestly, I didn't mean to pick him, but then I meant to pick Javonte Williams really instead of him, or Jamal Williams instead of him. But I picked up Damian Harris, and he's a solid back. It has been for several years now with New England, but now Buffalo might be a little bit different story with how he factors into that offense. Jamal Williams, of course, has been solid over the years with the Lions. Now is on the Saints, so we'll see how that goes. But And then got Rashad Penny. Of course, he's been good when he's healthy. So now on the Eagles, and the Eagles I think are a better team than the Seahawks, so that should be a good, decent pick there. We'll see how that goes. And then defensively, L'Jarius Sneed, good cornerback there. Sam Hubbard, he's been a pretty good lineman over the years for the Bengals. Then Logan Wilson, linebacker on the Bengals, so that'd be interesting as well. One thing I'll have to factor in is the bye weeks. Trevor Lawrence, Etienne, Debo, and Brock Purdy all are in the same bye week in Week 9, so it's gonna have to figure out how to work the roster for that. So we'll see how it goes, but I definitely think I can do better than projected to score last in this league with 0 wins. So we'll see how it goes, but definitely looking forward to playing again this year.
Yeah, I was joking around in the chat that I was going to get a D- for my draft when I was literally picking some of the players that I picked, including Jordan Love, and I was right. Because I guess I've gotten used to how they go in grade. I didn't know how extreme they were going to take it to. But, drafting from the 9 hole, being the runner-up in the league this past year in the playoff, I put it based on the final result, not the actual regular, because under that pretense, I probably would have had, I think I would have been the 5th spot, maybe. I don't know. I forget where I finished in a regular season, but I put it based on, I think I've done it that way. I'm pretty certain I've done it that way. So drafting from the 9 hole, the quarterback run definitely was in my face. And I'm like, well, I have to respond to that. I generally don't like to, but in the grand scheme of things, I just I knew I had to pick a quarterback, be ahead of it, and so that was really where I went with it, and I went with Lamar Jackson. I went with Lamar Jackson in the first round. I think in the one. So Matt, what do you call Luke, and Luke, Matt, Manny all went. Luke, Matt, Manny, and yourself, Josh, went with a non-quarterback in the first round. I was able to double back with Bijan Robinson, the rookie for the Atlanta Falcons. Wilson was behind me as the defending champion, drafting in China, and he drafted Justin Fields and Jamar Chase. I was able to get a couple wide receivers after that, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's dealing with some injuries, and Devontae Smith from Philly. J.K. Dobbins, whose career has been littered with great play, but then injuries as well. Dameon Pierce coming off of his rookie year in Houston with a new coaching staff, and C.J. Stroud as his quarterback. Drake London, the wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons, going heavy on them Falcons. I picked Alvin Kamara. I know he's suspended for 3 weeks, but it's Alvin Kamara. And with at least average quarterback play out of Derek Carr, he has prospects to actually do something in a soft division. Speaking of said soft division, Rachaad White for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers looks to have an opportunity to get some more carries and be a part of that offense, which is going to be interesting for sure. I drafted Anthony Richardson, the number 4 overall pick in the NFL draft, who's going to be the Indianapolis Colts quarterback, doubling down on the running ability and trying to make sure that I blocked Wilson from doing that. I mean, essentially, yeah, he wasn't going to be able to respond to that pick, so that was good. But that was kind of the thought there. I'm like, I was going to draft Anthony Richardson. I just knew I was going to in one of my drafts, and I did. Because the potential is, the ceiling is really high. It's going to look like a train wreck at times this year in Shane Steichen's offense and for that team, but when it's good, it's going to be really good. Pick Brandon Cooks for Dallas because he needs those slot guys. Prescott, having all those safety nets, and Cooks has played for so many different teams. I think he'll be a good player in that offense. Jordan Addison, the rookie, who's going to be on the other side of Justin Jefferson, so he's going to get single coverage all year. So he has a potential to do something in that offense, and they're going to have, definitely going to be the pass heavier than they were run game because Dalvin Cook is gone. I picked Jordan Love as my last position player on the offense. So 3 quarterbacks, 2 of them with huge, I think all of them with combustibility, and the fact that they're all liable to get murdered with one hit, but could also end up being really, really good. All returns, it seems like, out of Green Bay are that after sitting on the bench for how many years, that Jordan Love is in a position to make something happen. And if that's the case, I drafted him in round 13, and that would be the steal of the draft. I got him around after Josh got the Brock party there. I drafted Fred Warner, Jordan Poyer, and Kwity Paye, the defensive end for Indianapolis. Poyer and, of course, Warner, don't have to really get into details. Those are 2 of the best defenders in the NFL. One of my favorite players in Fred Warner. That's something where the IDPs, you're just going to stream them as the season goes long. There aren't that many IDPs that you're just absolutely committed to the whole year, that you're going to go and take a 0 on that spot. Wilson took Nick Bosa. That's probably an exception. TJ Edwards TJ Edwards and Antoine Winfield. He could make a case to do that, but it all depends. Some of the other guys, you had Luke got Brian Burns. He picked Derwin James, and he picked Foye Oluokun in the 9th round, which is probably the highest I've ever seen an IDP go in this league. So tells you where this draft was compared to other drafts. This draft definitely was weird, but we'll see what happens. You don't win a fantasy league on draft night. It's just the start of the process. You're trying to build towards getting to the end of the season and having a chance to compete for the chip. So they could give us a combined grade of D-, and I think we could be talking about in January when we come back for the new year, after the new year, talking about we played in the championship. That's what I figure. All hopes in terms of that being the case. But we will see what happens. The 49ers had their preseason. They played against the Denver Broncos. Purdy ended up having a solid performance in limited snaps. Both Trey Lance and Sam Darnold played into the 3rd quarter. Darnold played all right, threw an interception. Lance played pretty good, threw an interception. I think at the end of the day, minus 49ers Twitter and the toxicity that's going on, they're going to carry 3 quarterbacks going into the season. I think that they'll probably nominate Darnold as a number 2, but I don't really put much credence into it, mainly because they're going to probably end up playing all of them anyway, because it's the 49ers. Why wouldn't they? Bigger problem is Nick Bosa still hasn't signed, and we only have one more preseason game. Training camp ends this week, so the notion that he's basically going to come off the street and have to play in Pittsburgh week 1 is not ideal. There are other injuries to Ray McLeod, so the kick return, punt return guy, but we have players that are looking like they can fill in there. Got to watch about people getting nicked up here in this last game, but it looks like the team's coming together. Had to replace a lot of guys that left in free agency, but it looks like the 49ers have done that, and the depth is there, which has been an issue at times in the Shanahan-Lynch regime, but the depth is there. They picked up some good players. Having Cleveland Farrell, a guy who's a former top 5 draft pick in the NFL draft, as somebody who's possibly going to be on the other side of Nick Bosa is pretty scary, amongst others. So probably getting more detail on that as we get closer to the season here in a couple weeks' time. But 49ers looking good. Before we move on to the roundup, Josh, what were your takeaways from the second preseason game for your Jaguars?
Well, definitely the Jaguars have a lot of good depth at the position currently, so definitely think that they at each position they have very good depth, but also they had some issues injury wise with the defensive line and offensive line, so that's a big concern right now. Davin Hamilton, the defensive tackle that recently signed a contract extension, 2020 draft pick from that team, out indefinitely right now with the back injury, not related to football. So, definitely a concern there. Hopefully he can get back soon. Of course, Foley Fadakowski, week to week with a foot injury. Then, of course, DeJuan Smoot, not expected to be back until October while still recovering from an Achilles. So there's some issues there with some of the starting players, and hopefully they can get healthy soon. Offensive line, of course, a little bit shaky as well. One of the players had a knee injury, of course, and of course you still have some of the backups out with injuries. So a couple weeks ago, the Jags offensive line definitely looked like it had a lot of depth, but some injuries beginning to pick up. But the game itself against the Lions looked like they played pretty well. Tank Bigsby, I think, is a really good running back and definitely somebody that will have a lot of touches, I think, to back up Travis Etienne. Not Deontay Johnson. I was going to say, I think Deshaun Johnson, running back. I think he's going to be good as well as the third or fourth running back on this team. Nathan Rourke, I think, deserves a case to be a third quarterback as well. He's performed very well, extremely well. So, he's good. Parker Washington had a good rep with the touchdown in the third quarter. So, yeah, definitely a lot of good reps from some of these players that we expect to contribute or have significant roles. And of course, they played very well scoring wise against the Lions, and the Lions proved to be no match for the Jaguars in the preseason. So we'll see how it goes this next week with the Jaguars playing against the Dolphins at home preseason game, and expected to play the starters for a half. We'll see how long that actually is, and of course, got to be able to, especially with some of these players taking injuries, got to be able to manage that as well. So, we'll see how it goes, but definitely looking forward to this last preseason game here against the Dolphins.
Yeah, we got the Niners are playing the LA Chargers of Anaheim, Alameda, or whatever other places that they're a part of, but more of a kind of a dress rehearsal, more for the people that are trying to make the not just get out of that 90, but to go and make the 53 plus, and also the practice squad. That's where we're trying to go and look at that. One last chance for both Darnold and Trey to go out there, and a lot of the other guys are going to have a nice rest before they play on September 10th in the season opener in good old Pittsburgh, playing against the Steelers, which is going to be a very tough opening game to start the year for the Niners. So I don't know what is. Oh, okay. I don't know what that is. I don't know why I got this. I don't know what that is. Okay. We'll go and move forward into the GSP roundup. We'll start with the SRX series. They had the final race of the season at what's it called, Lucas Oil Raceway. They finally updated the website, so credit to them. It only took them 6 weeks. Jonathan Davenport won both heats and won the main event. Davenport beat Kenny Schrader and Clint Boyer in Heat 1 In Heat 2, he came from actually, Davenport didn't. I thought Davenport did when they said that he did, and they were talking about him sweeping, but it doesn't show that. It says Bobby Labonte won it. Clint Boyer, Kenny Wallace, and Jonathan Davenport. I swear that he had won, but whatever. I don't know. He must have gotten things mixed up. But he did win the Maine over Brad Keselowski. There was a huge last late restart there where Clint Boyer tried to slide Davenport twice. The first time, Davenport nailed Boyer in the ass, and then the second time, Boyer went full Carl Edwards and basically took himself out. Keselowski and Kenny Schrader rounded out the podium. Ryan Newman locked up the points championship, which was basically a foregone conclusion. Tony Stewart had a pretty god-awful night, had to make multiple adjustments in the main event to make the car worth driving. It was a piece of crap otherwise. There was a argy-bargy going on elsewhere within the field, but in the end, that was the 6 weeks, the SRX championship. Ryan Newman wins the championship by 45 points over Brad Keselowski, tied Brad Keselowski and Marco Andretti, the defending champion, and the original champion, the 2021 series champion, Tony Stewart, finished fourth, 3 points behind Keselowski and Andretti. Newman won a race, Tony won a race. The only two regulars that won, Kyle Busch won the two races, Denny Hamlin won one, and Jonathan Davenport won one as guest drivers. Hopefully they go back to the local heroes way that they did the first season of the series. I think that was way more organic than just calling in all-stars and just to show up to kick the crap out of a bunch of Jerrys. But Kenny Schrader finished fifth, Bobby Labonte sixth, and Deegan was the last of the regular drivers that actually ran the whole season because, of course, Paul Tracy got himself suspended because he's a douche. We'll go and move to the NHRA at Brainerd. They're not closing that track, thankfully. It seems like every track they go to, they're having their final race, but not at Brainerd. Antron Brown gets the win in Top Fuel. His good friend and former teammate Ron Capps gets the win in Funny Car, and Dallas Glenn wins in Pro Stock. So moving to that in terms of going into the ladders there, we'll go in for those categories just to give a little more detail. In Top Fuel, Antron Brown from the 6th spot goes and beats Sean Langdon, Antron's BFF Steve Torrance, Mike Salinas, and then Leah Pruitt to get the victory at Brainerd. Salinas ran the low ET and top speed, ran 338.26 in eliminations there. In Funny Car, Ron Capps won his 75th race in Funny Car, which is crazy. Tells you how great he has been and how long he's been at it. Capps from the number 1 spot. Jim Campbell didn't run. Then he beats Tim Wilkerson, Bob Tasca. Both Wilkerson and Tasca had issues on their runs, and then had to go head-to-head against Robert Height, and it was a good race. Beat him off the starting line and had a quicker elapsed time and speed. 388 with a 7.332.75. Height beat Bobby Bodie, Dave Richards, and Height beat his boss, John Force, there to advance to the final. Pruitt, I didn't go back in there, so Pruitt ended up beating Tony Schumacher, Brittany Force, and Justin Ashley, the points leader, on her way to the final. Pro Stock, Dallas Glenn has had a great year, beat his teammate Kyle Koretsky in the final. Greg Anderson was the number 1 qualifier, so the KB Titan team were up front there, Koretsky ended up beating Anderson in the second round after beating their other teammate, Camry Caruso, in the first round. Derek Kramer in the semis, and then Koretsky shook off the starting line. Glenn from the 6th hole beat Tucker, Enders, Aaron Stanfield to get to the final and win that one. In top alcohol dragster, Matt Cummings won there. Tony Stewart raced in that event. And Bruno Massel, the TV guy, also as a driver, ran in comp eliminator. So he won that one. Oh, they had Pro Mod Snowmobile. That had to be badass. You have to be really nutty, I think, to go and run Pro Mod Snowmobile. I think that would be really cool to see. But detailed results. Go and get into Matt Cummings won, and I'm trying to go and see. Tony Stewart won his first round matchup over Todd Bruce, and then in round 2, trying to see, Tony lost to Matt Cummings. So, and Cummings ended up racing against another one of their teammates in Jasmine Salinas. So kept it all in the teammate family, I guess, in that one. Standings heading into Indianapolis, Labor Day weekend for the U.S. Nationals. 5 drivers are locked in Top Fuel: Ashley Torrance, Antron Brown, Brittany Force, Leah Pruitt. Once they start doing the qualifying runs, the likes of Proc, Salinas, Doug Coletta, Clay Milliken, and Josh Hart probably will all lock in as well. I think Sean Langdon and Tony Schumacher would also make the countdown based on how many runs they've been making every race, going to every race, and making the number of runs necessary. 9 drivers have locked in to the funny car playoff countdown. Caps, Hagen, Height, Tasca, Chad Green, Alexis DeJoria, Tim Wilkinson, J.R. Todd, John Force. Cruz Pendragon will lock in at Indy. I'm not as certain outside of that with Blake Alexander or Alex Laughlin, but those are the 2 most likely people that would get in there. In Pro Stock, Dallas Glenn, Matt Hartford, Derek Kramer, Troy Coughlin Jr., Enders, and Anderson are in. Aaron Stanfield, Camry Caruso, Kyle Koretsky are the next 3 that would get in. Then there's a little bit of a points battle there between Christian Quadra and Bo Butner and Jerry Tucker. That's 5, so 39 points separating those 3 drivers. So there is an actual battle to get into the top 10. The Quadras of all, I think, Quadras, Fernando Jr. and Sr., I think, have run most of the races along with the McGahey family. So something to look at once we get to the U.S. Nationals. Of course, it'll be one of the deeper entry lists as well for all the categories. Gage Herrera, Hector Rana Jr., Eddie Crawick, Matt Smith, Angie Smith are locked in the Pro Stock Motorcycle Championship countdown. Steve Johnson, Chase Van Zandt, Mark Ingwerson, Gianna Evaristo, and Kelly Klontz right now in top 10. She's only 8 points ahead of Ryan Ayler, so that could change very easily. And then after that, I'm not sure. So we'll see what happens with that. Also, Tony wanting to go and win Indianapolis in a top alcohol dragster. I think he would be huge for him if he could go and do that here in a few weeks' time. MotoGP and Moto2 at Austria. It was Pecco Bagnaia as usual. Has become a Fabio Quartararo likened him to Fish Lips with his domination. Bagnaia won the Austrian Grand Prix by 5.19 seconds over Brad Binder. Marco Bezzecchi, 3rd. Marini, 4th. Alex Marquez, 5th. Binder, of course, racing at the home Grand Prix for KTM, former winner at this track. the one KTM representative amongst a bunch of Ducatis and Aprilias. Quartararo finished 8th. There were, 6 Ducatis in the top 10, and then 2 Aprilias, or 7 Ducatis, 6 Ducatis in the top 10, 2 Aprilias, and then 1 KTM, 1 Yamaha. Yeah, so that's the Hondas. The best finishing Honda was Marc Marquez in 12th. Definitely a lot of stuff going on there. Issues for the Honda camp and the Japanese bikes in general. Definitely something that looks like it's going to continue, unfortunately. In the championship standings, Bagnaia, 62-point lead on Jorge Martin. A further 68 points on Marco Bezzecchi. Has a decision to make whether he's going to stay with VR46 or if he's going to go to Pramac. Difference would be being on a brand new bike if he rode for Pramac versus staying on a year-old motorcycle with VR46, but he's part of the family there with Valentino Rossi. Sounds like he wants to stay. That would open up the door for someone like Franco Morbidelli to go and get a ride on the Pramac Ducati. And after the last couple of years of horrendous, last 2 or 3 years where it's been really bad for him, if he can get on a Ducati and kind of resurrect his career, it'll be something. You can see that Alex Marquez to a point has had that, albeit on a year-old bike. He's had many struggles on the Honda, but now he's been a somewhat of a contender this year. Brad Binder and Johan Zarco round out the top 5. Zarco is going to go to LCR Honda next year because they're offering a multi-year deal versus 1 year extension and then going to World Superbikes, which is what Ducati was offering him. Then in Moto 2, Pedro Acosta is supposed to go to MotoGP, but they don't know where because they don't have enough bikes to get all their riders on him. He has a 12-point lead on Tony Arbolino. Jake Dixon's in 3rd. Aaron Canet and Alonso Lopez round out the top 5. Arbolino and Dixon are coming back to the championship next year because there's not really any opportunities. Next, in 2024, a lot of rides are open, though, so that's where they are looking at their chance to get into the main category. Celestino Vietti was the winner at Austria over Acosta, Iagura, Jake Dixon, Somikant Chantra. Arbolino finished 6th. Trying to go through here. The only American representative was Joe Roberts, who fell out of the race 11 laps in, and no SDK still because of his injuries. The supercars were at the Bend. Brody Kostecki continues to put his stamp on the championship, trying to go and win his first a supercars championship, and goes and adds to his points lead. Was it 137? I think. Yeah, it's 137 points on Shane Van Gisbergen. The results, race results, go back into the OTR Super Sprint. The Fords are actually somewhat competitive. The results may not stay that, but they were actually in the mix for possibly the first time all season. Randall was fastest in practice 1 and was qualifying for race 1 or race 21, qualified on pole. So something to look at there. But Brody Kostecki won all 3 races, the Coca-Cola Erebus Chevy driver. So he's trying to go through, so now he has 5 pole positions on the year and 6 wins. So a career year for Brody Kostecki. His teammate Will Brown is going to be moving over to Red Bull Ampol 888 Racing to replace Shane Van Gisbergen. SVG is second in points, as I mentioned, 137 points behind. Kostecki. Brock Feeney is in third, minus 228. Will Brown, minus 258. Leading four drivers, Chaz Mostert in fifth, minus 313. We're going to get into the Enduros here. Sandown is next, the Sandown 500, and then they'll be racing the Great Race, the Bathurst 1000. So that'll be coming up here in the next couple of months. A few weeks' time before they race Sandown, and then a further few weeks after that to the biggest race in Australia, the Bathurst 1000. So we'll definitely get into that more detail as we go on. Craig Lowndes has re-signed for 888 Racing to stay there to go and make 20 years. The legend, the driver who's essentially like the Jeff Gordon of supercars, the way that his former teammate and now team principal Jamie Whincup is the Jimmy Johnson of supercars, because Peter Brock was like Dale Earnhardt. Craig Lowndes is an absolute legend, one of the most well-respected drivers and people in history of Australian motorsports. Winner of the Bathurst 1000 7 times, trying to go for an 8th this in a few months' time in a wild card super cheap car. So we'll see what happens with that. You got some of the other enduro grids coming together, other teams coming together, and the like. Indy Next will be at Gateway this coming weekend. One of the only oval races they get. I don't know why they don't run the Indy Oval anymore. I think it would be great if they did. Trying to go in Indy Next by Firestone Outfront Showdown. Everything, it'll be a one-day event. They'll get practice, qualifying, and the race all within a few hours. So that'll be a condensed show, trying to get everything in. Test pattern, series standout, show speed at Worldwide Technology Racing. So since they tested there a couple of months ago, you'd assume that the race would probably be a little more interesting, with even though they don't run that many ovals. Christian Rasmussen leads the points over Hunter McElrea and Nolan Siegel, Jacob Abel, Louis Foster round out the top 5. Reese Gold, James Rowe, Daniel Frost, Kiffin Simpson, and Ernie Francis Jr. round out the top 10. Jamie Chadwick in 12th, Jagger Jones 14th, and then Yuvan Sundaramurthy made his debut a couple weeks ago, so see if he runs any more races here coming up the rest of the season. Then F2 will be at Zandvoort for the Dutch Grand Prix there. To get into the points, it's a close battle in Formula 2, and Ao Pocher is 12 points ahead of Frederick Vesti. Still a lot of racing to go in their season. 3 rounds, 6 total races to go for them. Iwasa's 3rd, Jack Doohan is 4th, and Victor Martins is 5th in points. So we'll see. They've had the break. How will they do coming back? ART is up by 30 points on Prema in the Teams Championship. That's really where the mix is there for Formula 2. IMSA GT at VIR. Been a lot of news in the IMSA paddock with driver changes and announcements for 2024. So that's something that I have to keep track of. Some of the drivers and teams that are going to be, some of the drivers and where they're going to be moving or what we're going to be doing. Of course, their website doesn't work. Okay, there you go. Finally. The race, the Michelin GT Challenge at VIR. They'll race, they will have the VP Racing, or they'll have the WeatherTech Sports Car GT cars. They'll have the Michelin Pilot Challenge, which I think is the biggest field they're going to have. IMSA, the VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. Then they're going to have Lamborghini Super Trofeo and the Mazda MX-5 Cup, which actually tested at Martinsville Speedway with luminaries such as Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Bobby Labonte amongst a crowd of a lot of name drivers there that were trying to test at Martinsville. Interesting possibility there that could come from that. In the Michelin GT Challenge, in the GT Pro category, 5 cars, Antonio Garcia and Jordan Taylor in the Corvette. Jordan Taylor going back to his family team to run in the second Acura DPI or LMP, whatever the fuck, yeah, GTP car. There you go. Klaus Bachler, Patrick Pile in the Pfaff Motorsports Porsche. Jack Hawksworth, Brent Barnacote in the Lexus Sealmaster Vassar Sullivan car. Ross Gunn, Alex Riberas, Aston Martin Vantage GT3 Harder Racing, number 23. And then Daniel Juncadella and Jules Gounon in the WeatherTech Racing AMG Mercedes. Then 15 cars in the GTD category. Then Paul Miller Racing BMW, Brian Sellers, and Madison Snow. The Vassar Sullivan Lexus of Aaron Telitz and Frankie Montecalvo, number 12. The Hawks with Barnaco, number 14. Roman DeAngelis, Marco Sorensen, Harder Racing 27, Aston. The Team Korthoff Motorsports Mercedes of Mike Skeen and Mikhail Grenier. The Windward Racing Mercedes, number 57, of Russell Ward and Philip Ellis. Sheena Monk and Catherine Legan, the Acura, the Gradient Racing JG Wentworth Acura NSX. The Inception Racing McLaren 720S, Brendan Uribe and Frederick Schandorf. The 77 Wright Motorsports Porsche of Alan Bringofferson and Trent Hinman. Forte Racing Lamborghini of Misha Goikberg and Laura Spinelli. The AO Racing Porsche of PJ Hyatt and Gunnar Jeanette. Got a pink dinosaur look to it. The Kelly Moss Porsche team number 91 and Riley, with Riley 91 and 92, Alan Metney and Kay Van Berlo, and then 92 Alec Udell and David Brule. The Andretti Autosport number 94 Aston Martin, Just Hewitt, I think is the sponsor. They got destroyed at Laguna, Jared Andretti and Gabby Chavez. And then the Turner Motorsports BMWs, the 96 with Robbie Foley and Patrick Gallagher, and then the 97 with Chandler Hull and Bill Auberlin. You have all the other entry lists there with the Michelin Pilot Challenge. You got Robert Wickens there driving in the called touring car category, TCR, per usual. All right, we'll keep it short and sweet. I mean, we've had the interview there, so that's why the show is a little longer. But obviously, we'll keep with what we've been doing. Formula One coming back at Zandvoort, the Dutch Grand Prix. It's been a benefit for Fish Lips since they've been back there. I don't know. I have to go and look at the picks out of curiosity. So I picked first. So Josh, you're up first. And what do you say for the Dutch Grand Prix? They've had the summer break, but does that mean anything? Is there gonna be some miraculous change in the results, or are we gonna see Fish Lips continue his domination towards yet another championship?
I think Verstappen is going to continue to dominate as he was and resume as business as usual. So, yeah, Max Verstappen wins the Dutch Grand Prix. I mean, it's his home Grand Prix, so he's going to have a lot of, orange and, McLaren, or not McLaren, Red Bull colors cheering for him there. So, yeah, Verstappen wins. Going to say his teammate finishes second. So Sergio Perez finishes second, and then third. Third, we'll go with Lando Norris. How about it? So that's what I think will happen this weekend.
Yeah. So you said let's put it in here. Dutch Grand Prix. Josh goes with Fish Lips to win. You said Checo?
Yeah, Checo to finish second, and then Lando third.
Okay. I'll mirror that. Fish Lips to win. I'll go with Lewis in second and Fernando Alonso in third. I don't remember what I said on Grid Talk, but I think or something like that. So Lewis second and Alonso third. That's that hard-hitting Formula One coverage that you love and expect here from the Grip Strip podcast. The Indy cars will be at Gateway this coming weekend, and it's a track. I mean, is there really any oval that Joseph Newgarden isn't great at? Basically, his last licks in terms of trying to stay in the championship, albeit it's not like it really matters. Trying to go through here. Yeah, so in terms of the average finish, in terms of somebody who's actually run multiple races there, Pato O'Ward has the best average finish with 4 top 10s and four top 5s, 4 top 10s, average of 2.8. But Joseph Newgarden, winningest driver, 4 wins. All of all his top 5s have been wins. 6 top 10s in 7 races, 4.3 average. So I'm just going to go with Joseph Newgarden. I don't think it really matters. It's just delaying the inevitable. Still going to lose the championship. But if he goes and sweeps all the oval races, that'll be pretty crazy. Kind of mirrors Rick Mears, which is basically the second coming of Rick Mears at Penske, so it isn't all that shocking. Newgarden to win. Wild card, I'm going to go with Linus Lundqvist, because why not? He's going to be driving for Meyer Shank again this weekend. All the rumors are saying that he's going to end up taking over the 8 car at Ganassi for which was Ericsson's car, and Ericsson's going to go and drive the DHL car for Andretti. So that's pretty big news. I don't know what the sponsorship's going to look like for Linus Lundqvist, but for Chip Ganassi Racing to have Alex Palou and Linus Lundqvist basically as a double tag team as the pillars of the team after Scott Dixon decides to call it quits, if he ever calls it quits, is pretty sick. So those are my pick. I mean, it's gonna be hard. You know, they're racing the race in the daylight. More or less the last few years since they came back to Gateway, they've run at night, but because of the TV window they've been given by NBC, they're getting a Sunday afternoon race because the Daytona finale, the Cup regular season finale, is supposed to run on Saturday night. So, weather permitting, of course, it ended up running on Sunday afternoon. But last year, what say you, Josh, in terms of this weekend at Gateway?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Joseph Newgarden, I'm going to go ahead and pick him as well. I don't think there's any other driver that could win. I mean, it's hard, for Joseph Newgarden, having won all the oval races this year, he'd like to go out undefeated on the ovals. So yeah, I'd also pick him. I think that's okay. If we can pick Max Verstappen both to win, then we can also both pick Joseph Newgarden to win. Wild card, I want to go with David Malukas as a wild card. Last year had a good race here and won, got third place. Yeah. So let's see what he can do again, and if he can put on a similar result, here for this race.
Yeah, and he's one of the many people that are affected by all the silly season stuff going on with the money that he gets that he brings with his father's support. Not going to be at Dale Coyne next year. Will he go to Ray Hall? Will he go to Andretti? Could he go to could he go to Ganassi? Maybe. I don't think that's really the case. Is it possible that now that AJ Foyt and the Penske teams have made a collaboration where they're going to have there's a technical alliance where AJ Foyt is going to get support from Penske? Will that change the narrative now? Will they be able to get better drivers, get better people in place to possibly run those two cars? That might be an option too. That makes those two cars look a little better. Maybe they can get rid of Benjamin Peterson and do us all a favor. So yeah, we did that. So now it is time to, actually I was about to blow it, but we'll do the trucks first. It's the first time they've ran at the Milwaukee Mile for the Truck Series in many years. Clean Harbors 175. They ran from 1995 through 2009 at the Milwaukee Mile, so I'm pretty certain that nobody in this race has raced there before. How the heck does that? Yeah. Oh, those are the only I don't want active drivers. There's only 4 because Todd Bodine's not active anymore. Yeah. So, actually, Matt Crafton. Okay, I'm sorry. Matt Crafton actually raced there. 1 top 5 and 5 top 10s in 9 races at Milwaukee. So there you go. I should have known. Matt Crafton is just the answer for everything when it comes to the Truck Series. 37 drivers for 36 spots. Kind of have a feeling somebody's going to go and withdraw. Because I don't know why you'd show up just to go and DNQ a truck race. Sawalich will be in the Tricon number 1. Josh Balicki, Wisconsin driver, will be driving in the 02 for Youngs. Derek Kraus will be driving for Spire. Greg Van Alst will be back in the Youngs number 20. Josh Rayum in the AM Racing 22. Brad Perez will be in the number 30 for On Point Motorsports, actually driving on an oval. Derek Lemke in the 33 for Rayum. Go through there. Bailey Curry in the 41 for Nice. And Matt Mills in the 51 for Kyle Busch. Tyler Hill this weekend for the Family Hill Motorsports team. Sean Hingorani making his Truck Series debut for Hattori Racing. Connor Jones driving another race for Thor Sport. Got into it with whatever that guy in the ARCA race by running him over, causing a caution that allowed Jesse Love to win at IRP. And then Dexter Bean will be in the number 21 with Blackjack Racing Chevy with Mario Goslin. So they'll definitely have to time in on speed. The 61 is another one, and the 30. So those are ones that we'll have to see in terms of who would most likely have the least amount of points in their favor to go with. So so Josh, you can go first. Let us know who you think is a good pick here to win at Milwaukee. First time in many years at this great historic racetrack. Second race of their Truck Series playoff. Do we see a playoff driver win, or do we see somebody that isn't a playoff guy go out there, or woman, go out there and get the win at the Milwaukee Mile?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with another playoff contender here with Corey Heim. Been picking him. I think he's a good guy that can win here Milwaukee Mile. He's got a good record overall this season. And he's driving for a team that has had good pace overall this year. So yeah, I think he can win. And my wild card, I'm going to go with William Sawalich. Had a really strong run a few weeks ago at IRP. Had a good top 5 or top 10 run going there. So he's a really, really good young driver. So yeah, let's see what he can do here at Milwaukee this weekend.
Oh, and full on Tricon with that, with those picks. Can't really go wrong. At least the 11 car truck has been fast all year. Dean Thompson at times has even been fast. The one on and off, so isn't out of the realm. I'm going to go with here this weekend. I'll do Christian Eckes. I'm gonna go Christian Eckes for McAnally, another playoff driver. I was debating between him and one other driver, and you know what? I'll scratch that. I'm gonna go Grandin Finger to win, and my wild card is gonna be Raja Caruth. So I'll go GMS. I'm going all in on GMS this weekend at the Milwaukee Mile. Grandin Finger, somebody who does have experience at Milwaukee, not in a truck, in ARCA and late models, etc., etc. It's a kind of racetrack that really suits his style. Figure Ty Majeski is going to be very tough to beat there too, because he's got plenty of experience at that track. But I'll say Grandin Finger for me, and to win, and Raja Caruth, who's coming off of one of his better results of his career in general at IRP. See if he can continue with that momentum at the Milwaukee Mile. So next is the Xfinity Series at Daytona, the Wawa 250 at Daytona, presented by Coca-Cola. Only 38 cars, so nobody will be going home. And Wawa is actually going to be on. Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's even. Oh, so they're going to They're going to have 4 of the cars with the different recharger flavors. Oh, that's badass. They're going to have. Well, I'm obsessed with Wawa, so that's part of my issue too. But so that is a bias. If I was running in motorsports, I think one of my sponsors would be Wawa.
Good restaurant, gas station.
Yeah, and they got all kinds of food and drink and stuff. So JJ Yaley driving for SS Greenlight, Moffitt, Graff Jr., and Decker all are going to have the 4 different recharger energy drinks. So that'll be on those cars. So that's pretty cool. That's a nice way to get activation. So we'll go through the field. So yeah, Sam Mayer this weekend will be driving a Tim McGraw standing room only number 1. Weatherman in the 4 for JD. Smithley, he was getting strays on the socials because of how JD Motorsports has become. David Starr, or that was JJ Yaley. It's not David Starr, it's JJ Yaley. Allgaier with Hellmans. Greg Alding will be back. He came close a couple years ago to winning this race. He'll be in the Panini 08. Bass Pro Shop tracker boats for Josh Berry. It says Kyle Busch, but I don't know. Or it says Justin Haley. So Justin Haley will be in the 10, former winner at Daytona, both in Xfinity and in Cup. Hemrick, Circle, Chandler Smith regular, his usual sponsor. It says Keebler Gibbs will be in the 19, so we'll see about that. Hill, who's been dominant on super speedways, basically got X'd out at the last super speedway race and was whining and moaning because of it. Jordan, the 22, there will be a 22 Jordan Anderson Chevy with Jeb Burton behind the wheel. That is because he has points to lock him in with the win from earlier this year at Talladega, so he wouldn't miss the race. And it'll be a throwback to his dad's Daytona 500 win in 2002 with the Caterpillar car with state water heaters and Perrier on his Chevy. What do you call Grawl, those are usual people. Jordan Anderson will have Capital City Towing in his return to driving, and his father-in-law, America's crew chief Larry McReynolds, will be on the box for that race. So we'll see how that goes. Last time Larry Mack was on the box, he almost won with Jeffrey Earnhardt. Gase will be running with Natalie Decker. Decker will have one of the Wawa cars, as I mentioned. Graf is another one. Ryan Sieg has no sponsorship anymore, so I'm wondering what's going to happen with them. The Alpha Prime trio, Ellis, Baccarella, and Jeffrey Earnhardt. Go Alfredo Dewipes, Josh Williams, Parking Guidance Systems. Okay. Alex Gwinnett, another Canadian driver, will be in the DGM 91, not what's his face? I'm forgetting his name. Usually in that. And then Riley Herbst, Kyle Segan, the 28. So I'll go first. It works out that way. I mean, I guess I'll go first for both of these because you have the algorithm, Josh. For me, in terms of Daytona and trying to win this race, it's definitely wild. I have a hard time really making a true choice. In the grand scheme, if Junior Motorsports wants to have all their cars make the playoff, I mean, 2 of them are going to make the playoff because the 1 and the 7 have won races, and Allgaier and Mayer and all. Barry has the points, he's probably going to make it. The only way that Buckshot Jones is going to make this playoff is if he wins. I would pick Josh Berry, but personally, I think he has a better chance of winning at Darlington or winning at Kansas than Daytona. But I think there's going to be a concerted effort to put Buckshot through, and Buckshot Jones gets the victory this Friday night at Daytona and locks himself into the playoffs and changes the whole wild card or the cutoff situation even more in that sense. So 91, let me think. So I'm trying to go through that. I mean, it's essentially, if I count all those, that is a top half pick. So my wild card pick is Jeremy Clements, because why not? Guy is the defending winner of this race. He hasn't really shown much anything all year. It's kind of what Jeremy Clements is all about. If they have a good piece this weekend, they could go and backdoor their way into the playoffs, and it would be a cool thing to see if that does happen. But so let me go and put that in at Daytona. Phil says Buckshot Jones to win and Jeremy Clements wild card. Josh, you get to take the dust off of the algorithm, get it out of hibernation. Hopefully it hasn't been misbehaving. But let us know what your picks are, your regular picks, and then what Tate Fogelman has to say, who will win the Wawa 250 on Friday night.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with. I'm just gonna go with Austin Hill this weekend. I think he's gonna be. He's obviously been successful on super speedway races, and there's no reason to believe why he wouldn't win this one here. So I'm gonna go with him, and it also, extends his lead in the championship as well. So that's also important. So I'll go with him, and then my regular wild card pick. Let's see. I want to go with. I should probably look at the standings before I make this and not make a mistake here. I want to go with Ryan Sieg as a wild card. He's always a sneaky guy here at this track. He's finished well at super speedways in the past. So yeah, we'll go with him as my wild card. And then, of course, our favorite algorithm, who's the 43? Ryan Ellis. It says Ryan Ellis will win.
That would be a epic deal if Ryan Ellis does win, but then it once upon a time did pick Tate Fogleman. We got close with Spencer Boyd too. I feel like we were close with Spencer Boyd too, but definitely picked Tate Fogleman because that was the 2 years in a row the Young's Motorsports team won at Talladega or something like that. So
yeah,
so that would be something. I guess I'm rooting for Ryan Ellis, or that would be something to see. That would be quite a celebration. A lot of people like Ryan Ellis in the garage, and he announced he's going to be going full time next year, so that'd be huge for him. The Cup Series at Daytona, the Coke Zero, Sugar 400, the last race of the regular season, one spot theoretically available points wise as we go into this weekend's race. So just announced there will be 39 cars, so nobody's going home. You have Chastain run Worldwide Express. Cindric will be in a Menards car. Breasttree on the 3 for Dylan. Austin Dillon Gear Wrench for Harvick. King's Hawaiian for Brad. Any Nagu for Corey LaJoy, whatever that is. Ketters for Kyle Busch. Lumar Window Films for Clyde. Smithfield back on the car for Eric Almirola after his go bowling. FedEx Cares on the 11 for Hamlin. First time in a while. He's been running the Mavis Discount Tire sponsorship for last few weeks on the East Coast. Advance for Ryan Blaney. Chandler Smith running his sponsorship. Quick Tide Products, Magical Vacation Planner MVP back on the car for Chase Briscoe because they're involved with Disney Vacations. Brennan Poole in the 15 for Rick Ware. Finance Pro Plus, whatever that is. Action Industries for AJ Allmendinger. Fifth Third Bank for Busher. Bass Pro and Ducks Unlimited for Martin Truex. Yahoo on the 20 for Chris Bell, same as John Hunter Nemechek and Xfinity. Dex Imaging for Harrison Burton. Regular Shell Pennzoil for Logano. Columbia for Bubba Wallace. Raptor for Will Byron. Celsius for Justin Haley. Freight Auctions for Michael McDowell. Riley Herbst in a third Front Row Motorsports car with Monster Energy Zero Sugar, number 36. Todd Gilliland in the Boot Barn, number 38. RaceChoice.com for Ryan Preece. And Beast Unleashed for Tyler Reddick. Boost by Kroger and Enemans on O. Richards' car, coming back after winning the Daytona 500. Ally Arena for Alex Bowman. Regular sponsors there for the 51. Monster Energy for Keebler. United Rentals and Beard Oil for Austin Hill. Gainbridge on the 77 for Ty Dillon. Blaster for BJ McLeod. Freeway.com for Daniel Suarez. So, I mean, we only have one spot open, whether you win or you point in. As it stands, Darrell Walsh Jr. has a 32-point lead on Gibbs, 43 on Suarez. It would take a lot for somebody to get in. It would take basically Bubba getting knocked out, which probably a lot of people are hoping for because they're horrible people. But, if he doesn't score any stage points and he's out early, that opens the door for those guys to make the points. It has to be within 60. I don't know. I'm trying to see where they're at. So it's like Bowman is at... he's too far out. Those are the only two that I think could make it in on points. Yeah, everybody else has to win. So those they need a lot of help from Bubba on his end or with extenuating circumstances to get the points to possibly go and get in. Last year in that race, I mean, Blaney was involved in a wreck very early in the race. Somehow or another repaired the car, got the thing running. Truex got involved in another wreck and ended up falling behind Blaney, and it was a couple of points, and that was the difference after 26 races. So It's crazy how that all works out. Honestly, I don't see that happening. Daniel Suarez, for as much as he's had a little bit of momentum here on and off at times, they just haven't had the speed that they had last year. He's had moments on super speedways over time, but I just don't see him going out there and winning that race. Gibbs is a rookie. I don't think that his veteran teammates are going to just decide that they're going to push him into the playoffs. I don't buy that, especially when in Hamlin's case, he's got two things on the line because he wants Bubba in the playoff. Reddick more than likely will be committed to helping Bubba win. He went and pushed Bald Spot into the playoffs last year when he should have used them up, even though he knew he was leaving the team. So I think with the Toyotas, they have a split deal there. You got 3 Toyotas that are committed to one deal, and Hamlin wants to win, of course, then and try to get his 50th win, because I think he's still at 49, I believe. Or no, he won 50 at Pocono, that's right, yeah. So, but he wants to go and, Denny won, his 50th at Pocono, yeah, so they have this split strategy at Toyota. I think that's going to be a problem. Ford's, who knows? RFK has been fast. Front row's been fast recently. Could mean that Todd Gilliland pulls one out of his ass. They have won at super speedways before. You also have Brad is great at super speedway racing, and they've had great speed since this next gen car has come along. SHR needs a miracle because their cars are terrible. So will it happen? Highly doubtful. But Kevin Harvick is locked into the playoffs, so who knows? It might loosen him up and Rodney Childers a bit. Priest has had moments on super speedways. Almirola's won 2 of his 3 Cup Series races on super speedways. Trying to think. In terms of Chevys, it's really about the Hendrick guys. Is the Hendrick goal to push Clyde to the victory or Bowman? Or is there going to be other plans in place? I mean, you have RCR trying to get Dylan in, et cetera, et cetera. So interesting to see how all that manufacturer stuff goes. And it's a long-winded way to get to my pick. But I'm going to go with Brad Keselowski. He breaks his winless streak. He already is in the playoff. So he's kind of free rolling. He is one of the most aggressive drivers on super speedways. And I think being able to free roll versus having to race for points puts him in a better position. He's had chances here to win. Atlanta, of course, earlier this year too. So Brad Keselowski breaks his winless streak going on over 2 years, going back to Talladega. Last time he won in a 2-car. My wild card selection, since we have 31 drivers, because Bowman, 30. So my wild card pick is, I picked them in the one game, my pick 'em game where you pick one driver every week, because I've been getting demolished for I don't know how many weeks. I think last week was the first time I got a top 10 finish out of somebody in a while, and I didn't pick AJ Allmendinger. I picked freaking Christopher Buescher. I'll go with Corey LaJoie. He has a habit of finding himself up front in these super speedway races. The Spire team is trying to act like they're big time. So how would you be big time? Why don't you just go out there and win Daytona again for the second time in their team's history, which isn't out of the realm of possibility. So Keselowski to win and Corey LaJoie wild card. Josh, you get the floor to let us know your picks and the algorithm, and then can go on to the sim segment. But let's first hear who you're looking at for Daytona.
Yeah, I mean, we are into the final race here. I will be at Daytona this weekend, so I'm going to the race. So I'll see this happen in person. But I'm going to pick Ryan Blaney to win this weekend. I think the Penske, they haven't been as strong as RFK, but I think Blaney seems to. I mean, Logano's been good historically, but I think Blaney is also someone who has been really good on super speedways. In fact, won this race 2 years ago in 2021. So he has experience winning in this race. He's won at Talladega in the past. So we'll go with him this weekend. And then my wild card for this race, go back to here. See, wild card. I want to go with. Corey LaJoie as one of my wild cards, as he's somebody who has been good at super speedways in the past, and even it would be quite a ruckus if he somehow won. So that's what I'm gonna go with. Oh, you said Corey LaJoie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was looking at it. He said Corey LaJoie, so that's not. No, I'll go different wild card.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah.
That would have been, we're doubling down before we even get the algorithm on. I'm like, that's a lot of doubling down.
Yeah, that's a lot of doubling down. We can't do that. No. I will pick. There's a lot of tough picks here. I will pick Eric Jones as my wild card. He did win the Coke 0400 back when it was in July, so that's definitely a possibility here. But so he knows how to win and has had a couple of decent runs in the 43 on super speedways. So we'll see. And then the algorithm picks number 10, Eric Almirola. So we'll see how this goes. Of course, Bubba Wallace plus 32 to the good. Obviously he doesn't need to win. Hard to see Ty Gibbs winning on a super speedway, with of course those interests. Almirola is the guy that could knock him off, but we'll see how good SHR cars are. And then Bowman. He's gonna be good in qualifying, I think, but he's not somebody that really has shown anything race trim wise, especially at Daytona. I think Chase Elliott's going to miss the playoffs. I think there's just going to be too much on the line for him to, especially at Daytona, to really pull this off. And it's going to be interesting that way. So it's going to be an entertaining race. Definitely excited to be able to attend here. So we'll see how it goes, but it's gonna be interesting, and hopefully we see a definitely entertaining race. That's the picks, and then of course we move on to the sim segment, and of course iRacing this week, Daytona on the Cup side and Xfinity side, so definitely going to be focusing on that and trying to race Daytona on both those series in iRacing. I'm gonna look here at the schedule. So the rest of the oval tracks here on iRacing. Let's see. We'll go apply there. So as I mentioned, Dallara Dash. So interestingly enough, the Dallara Dash is at Gateway this week, and it's basically high speed open wheel cars, faster than the Indy cars. ARCA cars at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Oh, open wheel. Oh, interesting. Willow Springs International Raceway. That's a track out west that they use for testing a lot. So a little road racing finally, but at Willow Springs, that's an interesting choice. So that'll be interesting. The Legends Cup is actually going to be at Oxford Plains. So of course we had Austin Theriault on Oxford 250 there. So Oxford Plains Speedway and the Legends cars here on iRacing. There, Cars Tour Hickory Motor Speedway. And then, of course, the trucks at the Milwaukee Mile as well. And then the 87 cars at Darlington, which last week they were at Talladega, and I guess they can't go back to back on the super speedway, so they'll go with Darlington, which is an interesting choice there. And then road course side, we got the Formula V's at Lime Rock Park, Silverstone circuit for the GT3 Ferrari Challenge, Stock Car Brazil at Watkins Glen, Global MX5s at Virginia International Raceway, USF 2000s on the Phoenix Raceway Oval from 2008, LMP2s at VIR, Formula IR at Suzuka, got the Formula Ford Formula 1600 series at Lime Rock Park, GR Butt Kicker Cup, Toyota GR series at Spa, the Lara F3 at Laguna Seca, GT4 at Motorland Aragon. You've got Touring Car Challenge at Hockenheimring. Let's see. Formula One, they call it Formula A, Grand Prix Series at Zandvoort this weekend. GT3 at Phillip Island. Global Fanatec Challenge at Daytona Road Course. Let's see. I'm trying to see Open Wheel C. It doesn't have Open Wheel C, but okay. So as always, lots of opportunity. Definitely think I'll try to do some road things. Hopefully this week, maybe on Friday night or something before the race. Do some iRacing and oval road courses. Try to do at least one Daytona, and then we'll leave it up to whatever I feel like for the rest. But yeah, it should be a fun week, of course, on iRacing. With should have an opportunity to win, especially at Daytona and all the other tracks and everything. So yeah, as always, stream at Twitch TV/usailor2, and go on there and watch all the streams and everything that I have on there. I'll definitely try to let people know when that's live, when I do go live, and definitely be able to watch there and try to give commentary whenever possible. But it's always a thinking man's game there, so we'll definitely try to give you insight on that. And of course, Twitter, JP Huffine, of course, probably tweeting a little bit this weekend at the track, and definitely have a good time there, and definitely try to give up some of my takes as we're at the track and everything. And then of course the YouTube page, Groupster Podcast YouTube, go on there. Groupster Podcast on YouTube. We'll have this hopefully at very, very soon, so go on there and watch that. And of course see all other shows on their episodes, and go on there and subscribe and comment, like our page and like our videos, comment and do all that stuff. So of course, always glad to be back on for another week. Glad to have had Austin Theriault, who former driver at Junior Motorsports, so somebody that drove for Dale Jr. That's pretty cool. Be able to be on our show. Kind of a surprise by you, Phil, when you told me that, but as always, glad to be able to have a driver like that on our show. So of course, thanks to you for being able to hook us up with that, and being able to get him on here and go pretty smoothly, I think. So glad to be able to go on for another week and be able to have discussion on this show.
Definitely, absolutely. It was good to have Austin Theriault on, somebody that I've respected just the way he's handled himself through the tough times, and now he's a House of Representatives member in the state of Maine. So great, interesting how life works out in that way. So thank you to Austin Theriault, and follow him on the socials. Follow him at austintheriault.com. And check out the Oxford 250 this coming weekend. We'll see how he does there, and support the Travis Mills Foundation if you can, with the couple of, or whatever you may have to donate. That would be great. We obviously been doing this 182, 3 episodes. So we're doing 83 episodes. been a continued great run. We're going to continue doing it. To be determined about next week, but we'll talk about it offline. But I'm going to be on a cruise, so I don't have the technology to go and do a show, at least initially early in the week, though we might be able to do it later in the week. We'll try to check out and catch the racing and have an idea what's going on. I'll gladly miss the Formula One race, so that'll be fine. But then I'll probably be able to hopefully get a hold of the IndyCar race later in the day on Sunday. Saturday, hopefully I'll be able to catch the Cup race, but see what happens with that. We're on, I'm at PG Matthew 28 on Twitter X. We're at Gripster Pod on Twitter X. PhilipGMatthew.com blog site. You can go and find the show. Basically anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find the Gripster Podcast. You find me on Insta, PhilipGMatthew28. Essentially, we'll have the show out as soon as possible because Austin came on and gave his time to us, and we will be back with the next episode either later next week to go and talk about all the things that happened at Daytona, at Gateway, and at the Dutch Grand Prix, and then we'll preview the Italian Grand Prix, Darlington, and the rest of the events that are going on in the world of motorsports leading into Labor Day weekend, and talk more football since we're getting closer to football season. So, Josh, as always, thank you as always for all the support, me, my co-host and right-hand man, and to everybody who listens and subscribes and downloads the GSP, we thank you for all that. And for Josh, I'm Phil, and we'll see you next time on the Gripster Podcast.